You're now listening to N21 FM. My name is Glenn Seaman, and I'm your host today. I am joined by William. Is it Will Packett? Is that correct?
It's Will Packett. Yeah.
Packett. All right.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Jason Hitzfield. That seems like a much easier name to read phonetically. And we've got actually kind of a good one in for you guys this week. These two gentlemen are. Well, I met Will in Charlotte. During some weird brackets, and we hit it off over a shared love for what is currently my favorite deck in the format. It just happens to be really bad, the Rapid Strike box.
Yes.
And we, one thing led to another. We had conversations, and I wanted to have him and Mr. Jason here on the podcast because they have a fairly unique experience when it comes to the Pokemon TCG. No spoilers. We're going to get into that. But before we do, fellas, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, go ahead, Jay.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm Jason, upstate New York area. I've been playing Pokemon, probably start from there. Been playing Pokemon since 2017-ish. First set was Guardians Rising, so that's where I really got my start in the game. Played Yu-Gi-Oh when I was younger, grew up playing the Pokemon trading card game. Video games, always collected the cards.
Yeah.
And then one of my buddies was like, hey, people play Pokemon competitively. And I was like, what? That's a thing? So when I moved back to Rochester after college, started just attending their locals there, Millennium Games and Hobbies. Big shout out, the home store. Started attending there, just message people like, hey, who's going to this cup an hour away? And they're like, we got room for you, sure. So the first tournament I ever went to actually was a cup. Kind of jumped right into the deep end. But yeah, I've been playing ever since. Kind of love the game, love the social aspect, getting to meet people, but that's kind of my quick story.
Nice, man. Glad to hear that. That's super cool.
I'm Will Packett, also upstate New York. We're all kind of sort of around the Syracuse, New York area. We have it surrounded, sort of.
Nice.
I've been playing since 2020. Kind of a super familiar story right now. Was just sitting on code cards during COVID.
Yeah.
And in particular, something about Galarian Cursula just like sucked me into the game, which was when your opponent attaches energy from hand, it does a bunch of damage.
Oh, nice.
And I don't know what it was about that in particular, but like sucked me into actually wanting to play more and more and more. And at some point, walked into Unplugged Gaming by accident, looking for cards or something at one point, and they said, "Hey, we do this local Sunday," and I started going and playing Galarian Cursula and weird like Leafeon stuff, just because that's what I liked. And then, I met Jay and a couple of the other guys that are currently on the team, and they sort of at one point were like, hey, if you start playing real decks, you could actually be pretty good at this, I think.
Yeah.
So that sort of, spun into making some good friends and taking the game fairly seriously and, traveling all over the place at this point and, spending time, money, and dedicating a whole lot of emotional fatigue to it as well. But a much shorter, abrupt story. But I think because of the Cursula, I don't know, is it Shining Fates or I guess Darkness Ablaze? Somewhere in there would be like my first like competitive set. Somewhere in there.
Okay, very cool. Well, it's great to have you both here. And you kind of touched on it. You guys are on a team together, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Excellent. Tell me about that because I'm very interested in how this works.
For us, I don't know if it's like the same for everyone. We kind of had a group of us, 4 or 5, 6 of us that kind of tend to play together a lot and spend a lot of time, playing the game before, after local events, that kind of thing. Started having communications about regionals, and it kind of just became one of those things where we were the ones talking about the game of our local, I guess. We were spending time together talking about the game. Our store owner, our local store owner, Unplugged Gaming, unpluggedgamestore.com, shout out. Cheap plug. Kind of caught wind of it and came to me one day and said, hey, we'd love to support your efforts and we want to make a positive impact on the Pokemon community locally and, as far reaching as we can. What can we do to help? And it was sort of first the Unplugged Gaming team from that.
Very cool. Now, Jay, were you guys two of the people that just kind of started it up, or where would you say like in the timeline? Did you guys were like the foundation of it, or did you kind of like stumble upon it? What happened with that?
Yeah, for sure. Our local actually has a little bit of an interesting story. So, I grew up in Rochester, New York, and the Pokemon scene there has been strong for as long as I've known. Um, like I said, Millennium Games and Hobbies, like they have been running Pokemon leagues for at least since early 2010s area. So I was always used to having a really strong local scene where I was from. And then when I moved to Syracuse, none of the stores really played Pokemon, especially because it was right after COVID. It was right out of the pandemic. So there's a couple stores here and there that hosted a small league. Um, and then when Unplugged opened, I was like, oh, this is a lot more familiar to me space wise. I think we could grow something here. So it really just started with like me talking to everybody I knew in the area that played Pokemon already. I was like, come out to this place, come out to this place, let's get this league going.
Yeah.
And we were at like 4 people for a league night, 5 people.
Yeah.
And then it was 6, and then it was 10, and then it was 15. And then when the new ownership at Unplugged took over, we're hitting 20, 30, 35
Wow.
for a weekend locals.
Wow.
And I think I'll say just from like being a presence at the store that kind of took the game more seriously and had the experience of like traveling to regionals and really like playing the circuit. I think other guys at the shop started to hop on and get a little bit interested. So like
Sure.
Will started getting interested in asking questions, and a couple of the other guys on our team were like, "Hey, this is cool. Like, I'm gonna go to my first regional." And I was like, "Yes, come. Regionals are fantastic."
Yeah.
Um, so I think just like networking, and then once the scene started getting built up at our locals, I definitely saw a shift of people playing like very casually. Like Will started with Cursula and decks like that, and then slowly over time, I saw a shift of people playing more serious decks and taking it more seriously, and then we started running more official events and stuff like that. So I think slowly that process kind of happened organically, and then once there was a group of us that were really interested in kind of going a little bit harder, it was really awesome that Will kind of spearheaded that whole movement with the store itself, and we had their support right away, which was fantastic.
Wow. That's awesome. So would you say like it was
right out of the gate.
was it born more of just like chemistry in the group, and then you decided you wanted to go hard in the paint?
Yeah, definitely.
Wow.
Like Will was saying, we were the ones who would really like talk about our matches and analyze what happened in the game and put the effort in to want to improve.
Hmm.
So I think that really helped, and then the fact that like we were the ones who were staying after events and wanting to get more games in and challenge each other and push each other. Um, and just from there, we were like, okay, cool. We all get along well. We all want to travel. We all are traveling. Like, why not do it together and start putting more heads collectively into improving?
Wow.
Yeah.
That's super interesting. Oh man.
Yeah, it's one of those things too. Like, it's not necessarily about the length of time. Like, I've been playing with Jay and Eric, for example, now for almost 4 years or whatever it is. But Chris is one of the guys on the team, and he didn't start playing Pokemon until like the end of or like the beginning of last summer.
Oh wow.
But we just kind of clicked. You know what I mean? Like his thoughts on the game and the way he would, we would talk games out. Win, lose, draw, whatever. We would kind of take some time afterwards and immediately kind of had that same type of approach to not necessarily like wanting to be the best at the game, but needing to understand the components of the game that were affecting how turnouts were and stuff like that. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's it's a widespread. Some of us know each other for years, some of us know each other for months, but it was a chemistry thing for sure.
That's super cool. How many people are on you guys' team right now?
We are currently we are 5 people playing on the Pokemon TCG team. What's a little more interesting about our team, I think, is we are owned and sponsored by Store, who obviously has a lot of interest in other games doing well as well.
Yeah, definitely.
So we're like sort of a trading card game team. So eventually the chain we'll have some guys playing maybe like on a Lorcana team, maybe 1 or 2 people doing Yu-Gi-Oh or Magic, that kind of thing. For us, naturally, I think for our local and our store, I think the Pokemon team is always probably going to be the biggest, most widespread, probably the most like promotional.
Right.
But yeah, it's kind of sky's the limit as far as like, if there's a popular TCG with good regulation rules and a good circuit, like it could be something that we're interested in getting into and branching into, which I think creates a lot of really fun opportunities for people that maybe aren't a part of something right now, or didn't think that they would be unified by anything, or never thought they'd be on a team of any kind. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think, Lorcana is something we're looking at next. And then we also have some really strong Pokemon logos, as Jay has said. Like our local is now really inspired to improve itself, and each player is really taking things super seriously. And in the next 6 months, year, whatever, I could see the Pokemon team also being 2, 3, 4 people bigger. You never know. So
That's incredible.
yeah.
Do you think that you guys like maybe spend some time like when you're at your local is like some of the time spent playing, and like the other, and a good like portion of it's like, oh man, this guy's really good. I want to put him in line or her in line and be like, like we're scouting for players, like a proper organization.
I think you're like, anytime you're a part of something, there's always that, like, like a Pokemon team, I think there's always that drive to like, who could be next, right?
Yeah.
I think I spend most of my time doing that. I guess I kind of like sort of manage the team, quote unquote, whatever that means. We all play our role. It doesn't really matter. But I do think we spend more time doing that at like events we're traveling to, or more premier events. We could have someone that brings the crazy weird decks to every single local and wins every week because we just don't know what to do against it or whatever.
Yeah.
Or, you have the guy that's getting in the backseat of the car every time we drive to a cup and, is right there in it with us. That's more the person that, we're looking at. So it's more when we're at these major events or bigger events that we're kind of looking at who could be next, I think, more than the local weekend for sure.
Gotcha. Do you guys, okay, so you mentioned you kind of do the managing, and you mentioned also that there's like all these different roles that people play when you're making that regional circuit. Do you have like a dedicated rogue deck guy, or like a snacks guy? Do you have that one dude who's always cooking up like Serena EX or something crazy like that? Like,
I'll let Jay take that one.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Yeah,
Tell me
I
about the
would.
squad.
We have an
I would
Arceus
say
guy.
we definitely all have our kind of, I don't want to say like niches, but kind of like interesting strengths that might not everybody play off of.
Sure.
Like we got one guy on our team who's literally just put thousands of games on Charizard.
Wild.
So in terms of like getting practice against Zard, especially when that was like 20 or more percent of the meta, like we knew that that's where, like if we had Zard questions, boom, that's the guy.
Yeah.
We have, and then there's a couple of us that are like really intent on looking at Japanese results, right? So we'll keep a real close eye on like Pokeka Book,
Yeah.
all that type of stuff, and keep our eye there to be like, oh, did you guys see like this tech or like this tech, or did you guys see that this deck did well? Maybe there's something here, throwing ideas out. And I think moving forward as like a natural progression of our team, something we've started to talk about is moving into like post rotation, kind of all getting on, not maybe the exact same 60, but pretty close to it. Like
Yeah.
we're all going to look at meta shares, what we think is going to do well, and be like, all right, this is the deck we're going to hone in on. Let's, rather than one person putting 100 games on it, we all put 50 to 100 games on it. That's just a bigger spread of information we can get, and we'll get a list between us and just send it for the tournaments.
That's super good. That's a really great way to get like a way better sample size. Obviously the numbers help out a lot. It's cool that you have players who have those strengths though. In my current like local scene, I've got a group that I tend to test with, and none of us are on the same deck at all. It's not even close actually. But I have noticed that it's invaluable to have those people that have those strengths where you have the guy who's just a Zard demon, and like you've got your Miraidon guy, you've got that dude who's trying to make a spread deck work, all these different ideas, because there's so many strategies, especially right now in the game, where I feel like if you don't have an understanding at least of 8 to 10 matchups per deck, you're gonna have a lot of trouble, just because the meta's wide open right now. I mean, you look at Limitless and you see, oh yeah, like Zard's really popular, Guardy's popular, this, that, and the other's really popular. But then, especially with rotation coming up, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. With rotation,
not narrowing the field by any means.
Not at all. In fact, it's getting split even wider. We're losing only a couple decks. There's some decks getting some new life breathed into them, and we haven't even seen anywhere near the extent of what people are going to cook up with these new cards. I mean, I feel like just thinking about it, back when Scarlet Violet base set came out, I remember there were a ton of decks that came out from Japan that were like, oh, these are like game changing. And then when it hit America, we and the rest of the world, we got like those ideas and we're like, okay, these are cool. And then just because by virtue of the numbers, you're cranking out so many matches, so many test games, everybody's got their different tech ideas, and a new list kind of emerges that is cooked way more thoroughly than anything that Japan has put out. Just the numbers are so incredible. I think that's an invaluable resource.
Well, I think too, I always feel so arrogant when I say something like this, but we are operating in the world's format for like our entire season, right?
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of those best of one decks, whether it's Japanese or other formats that are in that like City League type format, they're just trying to catch heat for a day or two. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it does require a little more fleshing out, which does tend to narrow the meta a little bit. But having a grasp on what they're doing, I think, does give a nice like skeleton for sure. But as you start rolling into these best of three events, you start to really shake out what's going to maintain its quality and not, I think.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's way easier to high roll a best of one tournament than it is a best of three. You can, because like you've seen it. I've entered like side events where it's best of one, or like even just like at the local level, you'll have just these random circumstances where like, oh, I just happened to get the donk here. Like, and if you're able to just that kind of opens an avenue where it's just like consistency becomes king. And that's why Mew has been so good. That's why Gardevoir has been so good. That's why getting an early attacker out with something like Miraidon has been so good for so long. Just because you're able to get that more often, especially in like a best of one. And I think it's really cool. I wouldn't even really say as arrogant. I think it's totally valid that the rest of the world does have more time and more people in deck lists and matches to work out what that optimal list is.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one thing that's also really helpful in terms of just kind of wrapping back a little bit to the whole guys on the team having their specialties, I think it's super invaluable in terms of getting the rest of us caught up if we're not as familiar on a deck. And this kind of gets into like a little bit of coaching philosophy too, but especially as like Will and I are adults now, like we have established lives, we both have full-time jobs, we both have partners. I don't have the same amount of time I do now as somebody who's 28 to put into the game as I did when I was, like 21, fresh out of undergrad, like just starting out playing. So I'm confident that I could pick up a deck and learn it if I put 100 games on it. I don't think there's really any deck, and Pokemon's not the most challenging card game there is.
No.
No.
But I could take that time, play those 100 games. That might take me 4 weeks. Or I can hit up one of the guys on our team who've put 1,000 games on a deck and be like, spend an hour with me, like talk me through matchups, talk me through lines.
Yeah.
And I could probably learn the same information a whole heck of a lot faster.
Oh yeah.
Yes. And I think that's where like not only the value of like the team situation we have going on, but even like the whole like coaching in Pokemon, or like seeking out people that are already experts at a deck, getting the information from them. You're going to streamline your process a whole lot more. You're going to get good with the deck a whole lot faster. You'll start seeing those results a lot quicker if you just have a network you can reach off of and work with, and we'll just all spread information faster. So that way we all know, this is how we play against this deck. This is the line against this deck. This is what you want to start against this. So that's been really helpful too.
Yeah. I think, I mean, if you look at our last month and a half, you can start to see how kind of the collective, right, can affect success and failure, and how you know limited playtime can still play effectively when you have information sources. And
Yeah.
even we were at a cup recently, and one of our guys was 2-0 and had to play into Guardy and hadn't played the matchup at all, and we sat down for 3 seconds, and I like just talked him through like your first 2 turns, and then he was good to go and ended up winning the whole thing. So
Yeah,
um yeah, it's like information's huge. Having someone you trust with the information's huger.
for sure.
So
It's cool that you say that. The information, it's so cool living in like this era of the Pokemon game, like the game. Information's such like a valuable resource. I feel like we kind of are playing in an era where it's new and it's different, and it presents a lot of new challenges, right? Like, so there was that recent debacle with somebody self-reporting on what was it, PokeStats Live, about like what deck they were playing. Which is it's interesting. Like, we're not here to talk about that specifically, but it's cool that information's able to get out so quick, and that like there's so much value in information. Like, even just knowing like, hey, in this matchup, like say like Guardy versus Charizard, like if I'm brand new to that matchup and I'm playing the Gardevoir deck, like I want to know like, hey, you're going to need probably a third reversal energy if you really want to consistently take those knockouts. Like, you're going to want to make sure you prioritize that. You're going to want to make sure that if you can put energy on that Shining Arcana Gardevoir without having to like use Psychic Embrace and put damage on it, you should do that. Like, that's just little bits of information that when you have somebody that knows a deck so intimately, that they're able to kind of convey such like crucial points in certain matchups. I think it's cool that we have access to that kind of information, because so many people have been playing a deck so long or have their specialty. So
yeah, because people have trends too, right?
For sure.
You're looking at PokeStats Live. Like, if you look at mine, like, it's just high roll aggro craziness, right? So even if I'm maybe not showing up in Miraidon, this guy's trying to beat me real fast.
Yeah.
Most of the time, and then I show up at Charlotte with, Rapid Strike, and it's like, oh, never mind, whatever.
Not
quite. Yeah. So
that's super cool. Did you guys ever really like have the expectation that the team would get as big as it is, or were you just kind of like going with the flow and seeing what happened?
Yeah, I definitely didn't.
No.
I didn't expect it at all, honestly. Like, especially because I've since the start of me playing the game, like, I've played a lot of games with people who are on teams, like especially in Rochester. Like, my guys,
Good
Lucas
team.
Thiel, hell of a player, Seth Wagner.
Yeah.
I got guys who are putting up like consistent results. They've been sponsored for a hot minute, and I would always like play with them and stuff. And I was like, oh, this is a little bit outside of like where I'm at right now. And then when Will brought up the idea to me of like, hey, our locals is interested in putting this little team together, and just the fact that he even was like, hey, get in on this, I was like, whoa, this is cool. I'm playing Pokemon anyway. I love the game anyway. Like, I'm traveling. Why not do it with a group of people that I get along with? So I definitely didn't have any expectations whatsoever. So it's been really exciting to watch it grow as it has.
Yeah, and kind of like quickly, the fact that people even care, I guess, is like shocking to me, right? Like, instantly people want to know, like, how can I be involved? How can I help? Even people that don't have expectations of being on a team at any point, but like, hey, I want to help this team. You have a guy named Dave that plays at our local, like, loves just like the crazy weird decks that you can build for 17 cents, and like but he's like, hey, like, send me your list. I want to tinker and just see if I notice anything weird here, right? And so like stuff like that, like, people care a lot about it. People want to be involved with it. People want to be a part of it. And then, the last couple of months, we've seen some cool success from it. And I think we're at least being taken pseudo seriously when we show up in an event, which doesn't necessarily matter to me, but also feels good, I guess, a little bit. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
My own worst enemy most of the time, so I'm really not worried too much about the other people at the events.
Yeah.
Because I'm there to have a good time at the end of the day, but I'm the one that usually beats myself. But no, yeah, it's to see in like 4, 5, 6 months time, kind of how we've built a community around it and networked around it, and it's become like a very real cool thing. It's been very exciting.
That's super cool. Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said about like wanting to belong to something, and
Absolutely.
people, in case you haven't noticed, people freaking love Pokemon. Like I know that that sounds like low hanging fruit and a pretty obvious statement, but
sometimes
people,
we just need to be told that we're a part of something cool, right?
yeah, it's nice to be like, oh man, I like if you have a favorite Pokemon, like if you like something that's kind of weird, you know, like if you got some goon in like your locals that's like, oh dude, Scovillain, new favorite. And like you happen to find
Cool.
the same two weirdos that love that guy, like that can cause a really quick and interesting like just loving the same thing can be so powerful for networking, for friendships, and for all kinds of stuff like that. It's really important to love the same stuff, and it's cool that that's clear.
In like a community like ours, it's it is definitely full of people who growing up maybe did have a harder time being a part of something, right? And I don't mean to generalize by any means, but like there are definitely people who maybe struggled when they were younger that find their way into tabletop games, card games, the whole nerd world, right?
Yeah.
And the idea for them to be a part of a team or a collective or a group or something that matters or has significance, I think is like a really cool goal and really good idea for them.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely, for sure. And it does actually lead me to ask a little bit further. I spoke about how important it is to love something and to, as a community, love something. I'm curious to ask for you guys. This has been a question I've been trying to make consistent with my guests. Do you have a Pokemon either currently or like in the past that sticks out that either you guys individually or as a group have come to love as a result of like playing a certain deck or a certain team, if you ever did VGC or like something like that? And if so, I want to hear the story.
That's a good question. I like that one. I was
Thank you.
When you first started asking, I was like, oh, I'll talk about. I mean, I have multiple Pokemon tattooed on me, so I was like, I thought that's where we were going.
I'd love to hear about those too. That's sick.
Yeah, I mean, specifically from cards, like I love Night March, so I got a little Pumpkaboo.
That's awesome.
A Halloween or two ago, and then I have my initials and the unknowns, J and then H.
Nice.
But specifically from playing, I would say I never thought I would like Greninja as much as I did.
Really?
Radiant Greninja specifically. I mean, growing up. So I mean, like I said, I'm 28. Gen Tour, hard as could be. That's just what I grew up. I mean, I grew up playing Red Blue. Those are the first games, but like the bulk of really starting to love Pokemon was Gen 2, Gen 3. So by the time X and Y came out, I was in college already. So I definitely didn't play them when they first dropped. I ended up going back to them, but I was like, what's this weird frog with a tongue scarf? This guy's a little freaky. And then once the card dropped, and I was like, oh, this card is literally insane.
I love him. Yeah, he's so good.
Yeah, like I genuinely think Radiant Greninja might be like one of the top 2 or 3 cards in the whole format. I think the card's insane.
It's not even close.
Yeah, I think it might honestly. I think it might be the best card in the format. I think I might be able to argue that one, but
it fits everywhere.
It fits everywhere.
Right?
Ability's insane.
Every deck's
Attack's
trying
insane.
Yeah. That card's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It'll get played in multiple decks until it rotates, but
for sure.
I think that's one that sticks out more recently. When I first started playing Zoroark, just from Zoroark GX, I was, if I could say trade, I was playing it. First deck I built was Zoroark Decidueye, with 1 Lele because I had just started, and I was like, ugh, $40 card, I can't do that.
What is this, Yu-Gi-Oh? Yeah.
Yeah, right. But Zoroark was one I was like, I didn't really super resonate with. I thought it was always cool in the games, like, oh, you can transform. Um, but playing Trade and Riot is beating over and over and over. That
Yeah,
card got a soft spot in my heart for sure.
absolutely. I totally get that. Well, what about you?
It's actually funny because anytime anything with the words Leafeon comes out, like Jay actually like messages me right away. Like he was walking through Charlotte and he's like, "Dude, I saw someone playing Arc Leafeon. What are you doing? You're wasting your time.
Whoa.
Stop playing Urshifu." Like,
That's awesome.
but actually, I would say, and Jay has probably a little bit to do with this. When Gen 8 came out, like I just like fell in love with Corviknight. Like perfect Pokemon.
Understandably so. He's sick.
So
Like
good.
just doesn't get hurt by anything except fire, and fire is like clearly just missing from that game in a big way.
Yeah.
Right. So it just like you just stomped through the whole game with Corviknight. And then I think when I really started deciding like I'm willing to dedicate some time to deck building, money to deck building stuff, Jay sent me the Art Corviknight lists.
Oh,
with
nice.
With the, you know, you shear all the metal energies off and Cheryl and then put them back. And that deck may be the reason I'm playing now, right? Like that's the reason why I like want to be good at the game, because like all of a sudden I was winning locals, right? And I was doing it with Corviknight, and I was like, this Pokemon is so sick. It's one of my favorites. Top 2 for sure. We'll spend way too much money on a Corviknight plush, and now it's on a card that I'm winning with, right? Like that's cool.
Yeah.
And then awesome. Like Big Metal Bird paired up with a Bronzong, like come on. So yeah, I think Corviknight's one I'm always gonna like hope is good, right? Like I can't wait for the Corviknight EX to eventually to come out, right?
Yeah.
That's like Corviknight EX with, you know, zero retreat, big bulky bird.
That would go crazy.
It's gotta happen. Yeah.
I'd be scared if they print that, because you know they're gonna put like 330 on it.
Just yeah, you know what's gonna be annoying is when
bird.
Yeah, but when they like Terra type it as fire or something, I'm gonna just hate it. I'm gonna hate it.
Oh, that would be brutal.
Oh yeah.
Because we
I also can't
fire
believe I didn't mention Arceus. I'm painfully Arceus pilled.
Yeah. It's good.
I mean, not only is it the deck I've seen the most success with since it came out, whether it's mostly Arctina when that was a deck that was
coming back
more viable. It is coming, and
in a big way.
I'm ready. I'm ready. I've been itching. I'm the guy. I'm like 330. Like 330 now. I don't care that Path's gone. I can hit 330.
Yeah.
That's all that matters. I can have access to Shred if I throw the Relicanth in there.
True.
It's coming back, but yeah, I'm painfully Arceus pilled, and often have to get convinced to not play a deck with Arceus in it.
No, I get that.
All right, put the Arceus down. Let's let's start talking about these other decks now.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. Arceus is great. I'm in the process of building like Arctina for next format, and I'm working on the Arc Gudra Vulpix, just because that's just gonna be a fun list. Alolan Vulpix V-Star is absolutely like, as soon as I laid eyes on it, like I'm like, oh, that's my pet card. I love this card. It stems a lot from like when it came out. It was Silver Tempest format, and it's kind of where I got a lot of like, I guess my answer to these questions. Like I never thought I'd love Origin Form Palkia or Inteleon. When I first saw Inteleon, dude, I was like, this sucks. This is terrible. And then I played the Shady Dealings engine, and my life was changed. Just so good. But like I put an Alolan Vulpix in that deck specifically for like the Lugia, for an Arceus, or like for whatever. It was mostly for Lugia because that was the only deck that mattered. But yeah, no, like I've loved that card, and I'm excited for it to come into to Arceus, to actually have some time in the spotlight, because other than now, it's just been kind of a meme card that shows up once in a blue moon to mess with people and make a stink on stream.
Yeah, I was gonna say Szymanski definitely gave the card its due credit at UIC, but as also Dura, and that probably carried it pretty hard. But
true.
Yeah, I think Vulpix will definitely have its time to shine more than it probably ever has since it released once rotation hits.
For sure. Do you guys want to go ahead and talk about rotation and just kind of what it looks like for y'all and for kind of your philosophy going into the rotation? I know we're still like a month away, but or maybe 2, but
yeah. I mean, we're definitely we're gearing up, ready to go. Will's been the MVP on getting all these proxies ready for us to go, so that way we've been jamming games. One of our
Printer
guys
ink
is
king.
true. I can't imagine having a printer, but
Let's go.
someone does.
Let's
So
go.
Yeah, Staples loves me right now.
We got the proxies ready. We a couple of our guys are big on playing like tabletop sim to like get reps in on the decks already. I'm itching for rotation. I'm ready. I feel like the meta has been, I don't know if stale is the right word I want to use, but it's been pretty similar for the last like 2-3 months now. And if it wasn't for like Roaring Moon having the resurgence it has in the last couple, like maybe month and a half, it really has just been the same format for the last long time. And I think certain cards leaving, like Mew leaving, is going to help freshen things up a lot.
Yeah.
As much as like I've played plenty of Mew, the deck's insane. But that leaving, VIP pass leaving, I think, I can't wait. I can't wait for that one. But yeah, we're ready for rotation.
Get it out of here.
We're ready over here.
Yeah, and getting people to figure out how to like play their game without hiding behind path, I think could actually be complicated for some people, right?
Yeah,
and that's no judgment on anyone that loved Arctina or Judge Mew. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think Jay and I rocked
part of the problem.
Like Judge Path Mew for 4 or 5 months, and it was like a number 2 option for every event we went to for how long, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I think I was hiding behind it a little bit too. Like, was I expressing my skill knowing I could just like judge path and probably win if I had 2 Mews set up? Yeah, maybe a little bit, you know?
Yeah.
So I think it's nice knowing like we're gonna cook, we're gonna innovate, we're gonna be on top of it on our own this time. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
I'm not gonna hide behind behind one like maybe super overpowered, kind of broken, kind of toxic card. And I'm not talking about Snorlax. So
oh yeah, that one's not going anywhere. We're gonna get plenty of Snorlax in the next month or so.
Yeah, we're gonna get a healthy dose.
We sure
Yeah, it's gonna be a healthy dose of the lax.
Minior stocks are up.
Yeah, if you don't know how to play against control at this point,
dude, we're in for
start hitting the books.
Trouble. Yep,
start hitting the books.
We're gonna have to have it built to test into from proxy build straight as we head into Orlando. Like, we have to take it seriously. I think most of us, for the most part, dodged those bullets at our last few events, but like we can't keep playing with house money when it comes to that. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's a brutal deck to go against, and it's only going to get better. Yeah, I'm interested. You said you guys have like a tabletop sim that you use. Which one is that for post rotation? Because I need to know for me, and I'm sure the people at home also would want to know a good tabletop sim to practice for future formats.
Yeah, I think the one that the guys on our team use is the one on Steam, just Tabletop Simulator. It's very much you have to do everything manually. You even have to like input skins of like the cards, what they do, and you really have to do everything yourself. But once you have it in, you can play against other. You have to have somebody else to play against, but as long as that's not a problem, you can just jam games over and over and over once they're coded in. I think something we're going to start using a lot more probably is the tabletop sim through Limitless.
Yeah,
that's an invaluable resource now that you can.
It's a good one.
Rather than having to like solitaire against yourself with physical cards, now that you can solitaire with digital or even against somebody else is huge.
Yeah. Did they finally get matchmaking on that? Or like private lobbies?
I think you can do 2-player.
Okay.
I think you can do 2-player now on there.
I feel like it was mentioned that if we can't yet, it's a hope, right? Like, I feel like I've heard it in conversation.
Yeah. Are you guys looking forward to Twin Leaf coming out whenever it eventually does?
If it does, I think it'll be great. Not only that, but the one other sim that I haven't monkeyed around with yet, but I want to, is the one Zhao Zhao put out, or Michael Long, also known as. but he coded, like developed it himself, really put
Wow.
in all the time himself, completely developed it. Um, and recently put out a statement to Pokemon, was like, hey, I would love to make this my full-time job. I love coding. I love Pokemon. Let me work on live, and like put out this like business
Somebody.
pitch, honestly. And it was like
Yeah.
multiple steps of what he'd want to do to like improve live, and features he'd want to add, like an actual dedicated ranked ladder where you can see ranks of other people, the ability to save your replays, all things that I would love to see in live. So if the thing he coded has any of those capabilities, I think that's definitely worth checking out as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Live is in it's in a spot. It's in a spot right now. That's for sure.
Mhm.
I will give credit where it's due. If you look at like live now versus 6 months ago, is it a way
Oh,
better play experience?
Leagues,
Like,
Absolutely.
leagues above.
yeah, right. Like they listened at least in some regard, right? And bug
Definitely.
fixes have been a priority, which wasn't the case with online.
True.
Now you've heard the rumors that they didn't want them to fix online because they knew they weren't going to be dedicating any money or time to it.
Yeah.
That's
sure.
neither here nor there to me. The fact of the matter is the engine we have now has improved.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
I will give them that much credit at least, right?
Oh, they've earned it. It's absolutely flowers that they deserve. Like I'm just glad that they aren't just abandoning ship and be like, well, here it is. We'll put the new set up eventually,
Right.
and maybe we'll fix this bug. Maybe not.
No, yeah.
As a gamer, I've experienced that way too many times. Just playing video games where developers don't care about something, or they care about it but aren't willing to put in the effort. And it's very clear that TPCI and Creatures and Game Freak, I forget exactly who runs. I think it's Creatures, but they have the desire to fix the game and are willing to allocate the resources to fix the game. It's just going to take some time.
Yeah. There's a commitment there. I'm happy. I'm happy enough with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Back to rotation. What are you guys thinking of playing? There's been a lot of decks that have come out. Like we talked a little about Control. Are you guys on the Snorlax train? Are you rocking the Ursaluna? Or are you switching to something a little different?
I can't imagine a world where we get all five of us to commit to. I'm not even. I refuse to call it Control.
Control seems almost disingenuous to at least Snorlax.
Yeah.
Pure Snorlax. That's at least compared to Control decks that have existed since I've played. So like when I would think of Control, I mean, as degenerate as it is, I would think of something like the Trevenant Melodic Lock deck, or like even like
Lock
Trevenant
is
Break.
great. Yeah.
Like Greninja Break. Those are kind of where I would associate Control, and
even Vikavolt, right? Like Vikavolt V.
Yeah,
that
something like
element
that.
of just like game control. This just feels like you're literally like you're lucking into some cards sometimes. And I'm not saying there aren't skilled people play like look at Cal Connor, right? Jay brought that up the other day because I did make a bold statement of where's the skill expression. Jay defended the deck and said, look at Cal Connor, who clearly is better with this deck than other people, but he's better with almost every deck than other people. But sometimes it feels like, oh, you hit Echoing Horn at the right time. Good job. You know what I mean? Like sometimes it just feels that way. So
I feel like it feels
I'm
that
just call
way
it
for
stall
some decks, for
lax
sure.
or whatever, block lax or whatever. Control does feel like we're giving it a lot of credit.
Maybe so. I think there's a ton of skill expression in that deck though. Because like
I think there can be.
I dumped on it a lot, and then I played like a couple of games on the ladder with it, and I was like, I suck at this. This is terrible. Like, there's definitely something to be said. Obviously,
right, fair enough.
There's two schools of Snorlax believers.
Sure.
There's your absolute tournament grinders over here who are like putting in hours, and like they have their reps. They know exactly when to use this, and this card. Like exactly how to maximize their Misfortune Sisters. And then you've got like your iPad babies over here who are playing one game of Snorlax with you, and then they've got another game of Snorlax on the iPad on live, and it's just like, well, you are here to get your one prize pack, chew some gum, and get out. Like you're not here for a long time. You're here to be very idle and just get your prize packs.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I guess as long as we're talking Control, I do think that Mill has intrigued us more than I would have expected.
Yeah.
Not sure your feelings, Jay. We haven't had a conversation about that one in particular. But one of our guys, Chris, did tabletop it. and really seemed to have a good time, and felt like he wasn't struggling to find the win conditions. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Is that Great Tusk Mill?
yeah.
Yeah.
With the single Comfy kind of out. You know,
What a
you're
card,
getting
by
6
the way,
chances.
to include.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's so
but getting
sick.
this, yeah,
it's unironically
it makes
probably
sense.
the best pivot the deck
Yeah.
can play.
True.
I've done some digging and looking at other cards that kind of fit that, like Wonder Treat basic that'll give you a card every turn,
It
and
gives you the card. Yeah.
Comfy kind of just fits that the best. You're filtering
Mhm.
2, taking 1 with the, I don't want to say a skateboard, but it's not a skateboard. It's whatever the skateboard card is.
It's a skateboard.
Yeah. Hold
It's
on,
a
let's take a
skateboard.
look. Yeah. Let me see if I can find it.
But yeah, Mill, especially with how it performed at
Emergency
the
board.
emergency board, yes.
There.
Especially with how
Same
it
thing.
performed at the first Champions League event, I was very surprised. Especially because it's like in Japan, control and mill decks never do as well historically as they do over here.
Yeah.
Right.
For us, so the fact that I think it was when they were 6-0, it was Mill versus Snorlax or something like that.
Crazy.
The fact that both of those decks were hitting those numbers, I'm like, okay, maybe this is a little bit real.
Well, and what's cool about that matchup too is you're racing their game. You're making them race into their own game, right?
Mhm.
Like if they see an Erica's and a Palpad go away on a mill, all of a sudden they're sweating. You know. And how often are you making them be the ones that sweat?
Right.
And you know, again, you're playing into some big 2 prizers and stuff, but they still have to hit you 6 times effectively, and that's probably going to take them 7 turns.
Yeah.
And in 7 turns, if I can get rid of roughly what do we figure between prizes, hands, and draws, 36 cards, I like my odds.
That's a lot of cards. That's over half your deck.
Yeah. So.
Yeah,
So yeah,
I think Control gets a lot of really, really good tools.
Yep.
I mean, sure, it loses Echoing Horn. You know, it's going to lose a few things, but what it's getting, initially my first thought was like, oh, Hand Clipper, insane, Control, best deck.
Yeah.
But Airy, I think even is like
Airy's
the
so
standout card
good.
it gets.
Yep.
So
That
good.
card is insane. I think it can't be underestimated, like how good that card is specifically.
You're gonna
for
find it
Control.
everywhere. You're gonna find it. It's gonna pop up in a deck you don't expect it, and you're gonna be frustrated.
Yeah, I'm scared for when like there's gonna be like a Gardevoir player that or like a Charizard player that puts Airy in their deck, and it's gonna be like, nothing could have prepared me for you to play this card. Why are you playing this? It's such a good card, and I think the Control play style as a whole is so valuable to the game, and I'm glad to see it come back. It is interesting to see new players start to see it and be like, what is this? Because you had that stink about like trying to ban Snorlax stall, which was a whole ordeal.
Because even like the Mewtwo thing wasn't, you know, it was Control's taking prizes, right? You know what I mean? Like, it's like spread meets Control meets weakness grabbing, you know?
Right.
Whereas, we're seeing variations of deck control or hand control or play control right now that's all successful.
Yeah.
I think when you're talking about, you know, like the mill, I think it lends itself to having the conversation about the kind of the widespread ancient box deck.
True.
Because that presents itself as a win condition, plus the baby Roaring Moon, plus the Roaring Moon EX, plus this, plus
the Koraidon, plus the Raging Bolt, plus the whatever dinosaur they want to throw in.
Yeah. So it does start becoming. Do you have the conversation of, do I want to play a pure mill deck, or do I want that to be a win condition against the Lost Zone decks I'm hitting?
Yeah.
And I can play Great Tusk into that matchup, but then I can play Baby Moon if I'm trading single prizes, or I'm trading into Chenpao, or you know what I mean? Like, so Ancient Box has me excited. I think we have to put some real hours, maybe as a team, like playing it in best of 3 into the Zards, into the Chenpaos, into the Miraidons, to see if you can balance a full 3-round set with that setup.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that, because I feel like we're entering into an era of the game as well with this next rotation where in something like Dino Box or even the Future Box, you're able to make those, you're able to kind of almost build maybe like a 56 card deck, and then have those couple slots open that you're able to have your dedicated tech slots. Like you notice, in like there's been preliminary future box lists, and while they're not showing up very well in Japan, like in my testing, they've been very good. But you saw like in that preliminary Andrew Mahone, his first take on future box, like he includes the Iron Moth for the mirror, and I'm like, that's a little ridiculous in my opinion, but that's a whole 3 slots in his deck that he's able to switch out for, like, oh, I want an iron bundle here for when I've got a big wall in front of me. I want what's one thing we play? Like, I want a second Iron Hands in here because I know we're going into a heavy Gardevoir or Lost Box thing. It's cool that we're kind of getting into a situation like that where you can have a couple cards on rotation that are able to, like, be there for different tournaments, for different major events, minor events that you can kind of switch out. I think that's a really great way to encourage skill expression in deck building that the game right now kind of lacks, because there's so many decks that are like, and not to dunk on Mew. I love Mew. I'm a Mew believer, and there is a certain amount of skill expression in Mew. But for the most part, you're running one of 3 builds, and you have room for like one tech card that you want to play, and it probably has to be an item card. And it's usually Echoing Horn. So, like, it's
and the proof's in the pudding on that, because like the one time I chose to play some variability in Mew was my best event ever, because there was people were lacking expectation. I think eventually it became kind of a popular thing, but I was putting like Avery and Fan of Waves in for a little while.
So good.
And I took it to Charlotte last year, which I think was like a spring 23 event last year. I can't quite remember. And had my best performance at a regional ever. I was just outside of day 2.
Yeah, I think that was April of 23.
Yeah, so like it was just like people, and then of course what took me out of the tournament was I ran into Diane Shemansky just absolutely cutting my deck and my prizes into oblivion.
Nothing you can do about that one.
What are you gonna do? Yeah, sometimes you just
most
play
people
those
don't
guys.
want to hit Alex. I don't want to hit Diane. All right,
Diane's the threat.
Yeah, Diane's the real threat. So,
oh man,
I think that's like the part that I'm most excited about for rotation, though, is definitely the innovation and I think deck building is going to come back in a pretty big way after rotation.
Yeah.
Like you said, the future box, ancient box, like even just a fresh set of cards and cards coming out. And, like you said, if you're sleeving up Mew now, if I sit down across from you, I know what probably like 58 of your 60 is.
Yep.
Yeah.
If I'm sitting down against Charizard, there's a pretty good shot it's just the usual 60. Right. Yeah. So like we're in a spot in the game where, like you said, it's a lot of, even like something like Gardevoir, like what the list is. If they're playing VIP or no VIP, it might be maybe like 4 to 6 cards off, but like the pool of cards that Gardevoir is going to play is very small, and it's known at this point. Yeah. When we get into rotation, like you said, we with the traits, the future box, the ancient box, like we're going to see a lot more variation, and that's something that I think I've been missing a lot too, especially as somebody who, when I started playing the game, was when Zoroark GX was a thing. And Zoroark, from the time it was printed till the time it rotated, it was meta because you could pair it with anything. There was tons of innovation in deck building. I still think like probably my pick for like my favorite deck, or the best deck of all time, is Stefan Eriksson's Zoroark.
We lost Will.
The Zoroark Dugong deck that was never legal for Worlds. Yeah.
Gotcha. It looks like we lost Will, so I mean we'll just keep talking about that for a little bit. I'm totally with you on the on the Zoroark. I think it's really cool that we're actually getting that back with we've got that with Refinement Curlia. I think that's super sick. I'm really excited for even how that engine is going to be next format, because like I think the best way we're going to have to play it is probably going to be, well, I mean, I'm excited for the Bayonet item lock. That's going to be another really cool deck that I'm excited to see and excited to play.
Absolutely.
So Yeah, I'm a firm believer that the game's probably been missing that like skill gap in deck building for a while.
Hmm.
And I know I'm for sure a hypocrite when I say that, because I know like a shady dealings believer, and I was actually very much in favor of the shady dealings engine because it gave you that skill expression to like make sure your sequencing was good and make sure that
Hmm.
you had the deck built in a way that you could consistently grab whatever combo pieces you wanted. Um, but I'm super excited to see that kind of that skill gap come back. And what it means for like again how the information's gonna grow, because right now we've got so many decks and so many players and so many lists being cooked up for individual decks.
Hmm.
And then when you add like when you're it's like if you've watched Naruto, it's the scene where Rock Lee takes off the weights and drops them, like with Path gone and like
Yeah.
all and Mew gone, and there's not these threats of like you're not going to be able to play the game pretty much because I have this huge dude, you can't use your abilities, and I'm doing enough damage to knock you out every turn. Like that threat is not going to be there, and that's going to be so good for the health of the game
Hmm.
and just the development of the deck lists that we have.
Yeah, we're gonna see a lot of stuff start to shine even more. Like, um, I know it didn't do great at the Champions League event, but even something like Goldengo, right? Like, started to
Yeah.
get a little bit more respect now, but still, right now, the biggest thing with that deck is they have to dedicate 3 to 4 workers, 4 stadiums. Like, they have to
Hmm.
dedicate so much slot to anti-path hate.
Yeah.
Now with it rotating, that deck opens up multiple more slots. Um, and I know going into Champions League event, it was touted as like that Chimpao. Those are going to be the big ones, and Zard obviously. Zard is
Right.
still Zard. It keeps everything. Um,
Bananas.
but even decks like that are like are already kind of established here. But I think a lot opens up for post rotation possibilities just because stuff like Path is leaving, or like stuff like VIP pass is leaving, so like Miraidon's
Right.
going to fall off a cliff. And as much as
True.
Miraidon might not be the best deck, it's absolutely like a gatekeepy deck, because if
Yes.
your deck is if it runs anything under 120 HP and doesn't set up quickly, you're going to fold Iron Hands.
Yeah.
Um, and you know, having more options to set up later in the game, or like Buddy Poffin, like
Yeah.
having a VIP pass that you can play turn 3, turn 4, it's not a completely dead card. You can recover a little bit. I think that's going to help a lot of decks out for sure.
Absolutely. And even when it comes to just what those cards leaving means for the game, like Battle VIP Pass also means that your Lost Box probably isn't going to cram you turn 1 every time.
Hmm.
So you can have that opportunity to set up like, oh, I can leave a little guy in the active first time, like for a
Hmm.
little bit. I've got a turn or two, and it's something I admire about the way TBCI has been developing the game as a whole for the past, well, since Scarlet Violet came out, is like we're slowing things down. And there's still going to be those like off the rails, crazy fast Miraidon, Roaring Moon, like the new crazy Turbo Hands stuff. Like those are going to
Yeah.
be silly and they're going to be fast. But as a whole, like we're going to make it a much slower pace of play. We're going to make it a methodical and heady game. And I love
Hmm.
that, because that's kind of like that's what I love about this game is it feels way more to me like a chess match than most other trading card games, because you don't have to wait after every action and be like, are you going to respond to that? And then you get to be like, this is my turn. I'm setting up a board state that you have to answer when it's your turn. And it's part of what I love about the game. I'm really excited for us to get to a point where that feels more of like a really great skill gap, and um just you get to have that feeling of like I'm doing better as a player, as a deck builder, as XYZ.
Absolutely. I think for the first post rotation events, like I don't is Orlando our first post
Yes.
rotation regionals in the States? It's
Yep.
like I think most of the guys on our team are going, which is nice. But uh, you're going to see people at the top of the standings at the end of it are going to be the ones who are deck builders.
Yeah.
I think uh, those like even like EUIC, like the first really big event for even outside of North America, like I wouldn't be shocked if you're seeing some of those people who have historically been very good deck builders that might not have had the best seasons in their standings. Like someone like Stefan Erickson comes to mind, or like
Hmm.
um, just these players, especially in Europe. I feel like Europe has a lot of really good deck builders.
For sure.
So I'm excited to see what they cook up for UIC, and I wouldn't be shocked if some people who haven't had great um, success this year, like Stefan Ivanov, even,
Yeah.
like I think he's one of the best deck builders the game has ever seen. But for his standards, the season's been a little quieter for him. So like
Right.
I wouldn't be shocked if someone like him comes out screaming at UIC and just
Definitely.
cooks something crazy and has a really good performance.
Yeah. Absolutely. Because I mean, right now you're kind of we're in the growing pains of the game where we have to deal with like the, oh man, I'm tired of seeing Charizard
Mhm.
every single match, and it's just this big dude, and if I can't deal with the big dude, I just lose. And it's a growing pain for sure, but it's something that we'll outgrow as
Mhm.
a community. And I'm so pumped for that. Like, it makes no sense truly how exciting that is for me, because this is also my first this is my first, well, not first major rotation, but second like really big rotation. I jumped on at a weird time, kind of. I think it was like right after Pokemon Go came out, or Astral Radiance, around that time period. So I
Mhm.
joined at the peak of this power crept crazy game, where it was like, you better have what you need turn to,
Yeah.
and if you don't, you lose the game, and it wasn't even close.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and now like there's just all this variety, and that you can build, you can express a certain, even like a part of your personality and like the decks you build. Like Will mentioned, he was like a very like, he likes to be aggressive and have that quick like KO. Like I'm going to try to dismantle your board state really before you can get it. And maybe there's
Mhm.
other players who like, I'm excited to turn one Bennett, dude. I'm so ready to be like, nah, no item cards. You need to put those away.
Yeah, we don't have
And
to
like,
rely on a coin flip this time. We don't have to go for
true.
the Shuppet coin flip.
Oh man, yeah. It's cool to have that.
Mhm.
Where we're slowing things down and making it a super methodical game.
Yeah, I'm very excited for rotation. I think the last couple months or so, even I've seen my motivation to go super hard has been dwindling a little bit, just because I think part of it is the fact that right now in the format, there's not a deck that I really feel like I resonate with the way I have historically.
Right.
Um, so just new things coming in, I think, is going to get me really excited to
Yeah.
test the way I used to, and like really put games in and find something that I love, rather than just being like, all right, let me look at these 10 decks in the format, let me pick one, and hopefully I enjoy it today.
Yeah, for sure. And it becomes kind of like a, well, what am I most comfortable with and what is the most consistent?
Hmm.
Because even if you have a ton of fun with a deck, like I loved playing Rapid Strike to Charlotte, but I got smoked in a good portion. Oh, welcome back. We just got Will back.
I
Perfect.
Cool.
see.
Yeah.
But even like
Mike still sound good?
yeah, you're still great. But even like playing Rapid Strike in Charlotte,
Okay,
it
cool.
was strange because like I had fun with that deck. I love that deck. But I almost was like Will said, I was fighting myself
Hmm.
to win games because it just didn't have that consistency. So moving into a format of the game where we're having decks not be like, oh, if you're not as consistent as Mew VMAX, you lose. Like we're not in that anymore, where we have the opportunity to kind of, cook up new stuff, and there's going to be like decks and archetypes that nobody saw coming. Like maybe we see somebody make the 151 Vile Bloom work. Maybe
Hmm.
we'll see Ega/EX work out. Like there's a lot of room for stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
To kind of jump backwards too, kind of like right before I had jumped out, you had mentioned too, kind of like there being the 4 cards that you can kind of slip in or out. I think that creates an opportunity to create longevity for a deck too, maybe, where
Certainly.
we've kind of seen a lot over the last this season in particular. I feel like JW and Jesse, those guys
Yep.
like stayed on a deck for a long time and just made little adjustments. Like how much better were they off because of that?
Yeah.
And I think having that opportunity to keep 50 of 60, 54 of 60 consistent gives the opportunity to like express more skill into the same 50 cards, understand those cards into every matchup better, know things about those cards that your opponent in the mirror doesn't know about those cards. So yeah, I do like I like that idea that entering a rotation where there's a lot of new archetypes and stuff like that coming out. It's like a refreshed game.
Yeah, absolutely. And you see that with players like Tord Reklev as well. Obviously there was like the whole weird drama where he got on his Lost Box grind and whatever. I mean, he was the Sablezard engineer when that was a thing initially, but you really saw like throughout this whole past season, like he got on Gardevoir and he stuck with it until they literally kicked him out. Like, and when you have that level of intimate knowledge about a deck and are able to kind of just know it like that, know like what its matchups are, and what its strengths are, what its weaknesses are, and how to leverage those in different matchups. It makes you a better player, and it also elevates your deck building, because then you know, like, I can afford these cuts, I can afford these tech slots, I can afford, and like we're moving into the era of 8 specs where it's like I can afford, maybe I don't rely as heavily, might be my strategy, like if I'm playing a future box, if I turns out I don't rely super heavily on the reboot pod, I can run something else like Prime Catcher. I can run something that's gonna really elevate my consistency that my opponent's not gonna see coming. And it's like we talked about, like when your Charizard opponent pulls out the Airy, like that's gonna be, that player, unless they're just like brand new to the game and just happen to love Charizard, like they're probably just like they've cooked with that deck and they've cooked it for a while.
And they found a very good reason to be playing that, right? Yeah,
absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I mean, I've been on the build of Roaring Moon that like I think the team's been on like the same like 54 of 60, some of us 58 of 60 on Roaring Moon for like 8 weeks. And already I've seen like how that's benefited me to be on the same thing. I can imagine, like you're talking about, Tord spent, I mean, since Gardevoir is viable, right? I mean, really up until through Worlds, up until this fall. Like, imagine that. 13, 14 months. You know what I mean? That's a huge thing.
I couldn't even imagine that. I deck hop so much where I'm just like, I want to play Mew. I want to play Rapid Strike. I want to, when I first started, it was Dark Eye V-Star, like, I want to play these. Maybe I'll bust out the Lost Zone Tina for a tournament or something. It's like, it's hard for me to even imagine or conceptualize that kind of just commitment to, like, no, I'm focusing on this deck and I'm going to make it the best deck in, even if it's not the best deck in format, like statistically, it's my best deck in format. And
that's a huge thing. Like you hit the nail on the head then. This is my best deck. It doesn't matter what I'm playing into. It doesn't matter what my opponents are thinking. It doesn't matter what 80% of the meta is. For me, this is what works. This is what matters. Especially like when you can exit a game and know, okay, I made 3 misplays and I can tell you exactly what they were. You don't know that unless you know that deck that well.
Exactly.
I left a cup really frustrated last weekend because like I knew I missed a Pokestop in the wrong moment, right? Like most new people to that deck either are not Pokestopping at the end of turns or in the right part of sequences and stuff, because they just know it's something I can do to try and dig for more cards at the end of my sequence when like there's ways to utilize it differently. That's a big thing, knowing your misplays. And like you don't know your misplays as well if you're not as familiar.
Right. Yeah. Super well put. We've kind of talked about rotation. I think we've kind of established, to round it up, you guys are probably leaning towards something like the ancient box, would you say? Or are you looking towards something else more specifically before we move on?
Lugia just keeps coming up, right?
Yeah. So sick.
And I think the reason for that is, again, we talk about the differences in format. We know Lugia has performed in format, right?
Do we ever?
In a North American format.
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, it ran, so like Silver Tempest was what beats Lugia and Lugia. Like, those were, it was like you were playing Mewtwo because you were the smartest person in the room. You're playing Arctura or you're playing Lugia and just saying, I'm going to beat you because I'm better than you.
Right.
now I think there's more skill expression in Lugia. There's more cool decision making.
There's a lot more gambling, that's for sure.
Sure, there's a little bit of gambling, but I still think though, if you know the deck well, you know how to limit the gambling.
Oh, certainly.
Maybe is, I guess, the way to say it. And I think that's a huge thing, but we've also seen it have success already. So we know in best of 3 it can do things. We know in our format style, our tournament style, it can do things. So
right.
It would be hard to not say that that's an option, right?
Mm-hmm.
My concern is that 40% of other people also think that's an option.
Yeah.
And that's never fun. That's never fun.
Yeah, I think that's going to be up there in popularity for Orlando for sure. Which I guess is kind of where we're at, trying to put games in and figure out what we're going to bring to Orlando. But I mean, especially with it doing well at the first giant event, right? It's like that's on our radar. I mean, Charizard is still very good.
It's just got such big numbers. It's hard to ignore. Yeah.
It's hard to ignore. And I mean, especially with the way people have been starting to kind of lean back towards the Bieberall engine and that because of other decks in the format. I think that's going to be really represented. Chen Pao's insane next format.
Yeah. Arceus decks
I'm not
too.
allowed to
Arceus
play that
decks
deck, though.
Why is that?
I'm self-inflicted banned from bringing Chen Pao to regionals.
Okay.
I brought it to the last 2 regionals I've gone to and done very poorly at both.
Oh no.
Charlotte was actually my worst event since I started playing.
Oh no.
It just I got into a weird bracket early on, and I wasn't drawing well. I wasn't playing well. Like it was also preparation wise, like I wasn't at where I should have been. But the team has agreed that I am banned for bringing Chen Pao to events until further notice. So a personal, like, selfish goal of mine is I want to work towards getting unbanned from Chen Pao, because I think that deck is just insane next format.
It is good. Yeah. It's like the best deck in format on paper. It really
that's
is.
The thing. On paper, it beats everything.
Absolutely.
You start.
It's just you gotta make it show up. This deck reeks, bro. What is this?
Yeah, and there's no live translation with Chen Pao, right? Like, it feels like oh, I set up 40 games in a row, man. Like I went 35 for 40 set up. I'm like, I'm the next Arceus player. Here I come. And then you show up at Charlotte, and it's like, I got beat by Tinkaton, and I got like, it just didn't
farmed
work.
by the Swim Freely deck.
Yeah. I will agree though. Like for some reason, anything with like Bibarel in it, like, just feels attractive.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Good. I don't know what it is. And like, I'm not even saying that as a joke. Like, I just don't like something about that. Like, knowing how much more effective my Ultra Balls are just because Bibarel's in the deck, like, feels so good.
Being able to fill your hand to 5, who would have thought, feels really awesome.
Right?
Yeah.
We've never seen that ability before. I played a lot of Buzzwole with Seeking, or not Abyss Seeking, Abyssal Hand. So like that, Bibarel's always been kind of natural for me, but I know a lot of people's gut reaction was like, "Oh, Path is leaving. Why play Bibarel? Like, Bibarel's only good because of Path." Or like, even I've seen a lot of discourse of people playing Charizard. They're like, "I don't understand why Bibarel is seeing so much more play in Japan. Path is gone. That was the only reason to play Bibarel and Charizard." But I mean, you got to look at Buddy Poffin lets you get 70 HP dudes after turn 1. Bibarel. You know, like, Iono proofing yourself is just
Iono's in the game.
Iono's in the game. Like, the number one thing I can't stand
at the same time.
Yeah, the number one thing I can't stand is losing games when I'm playing decks that can't Iono proof themselves, like, just aren't playing Bibarel. It's just losing to like Iono to 5.
Yep.
Or something like that. Like, Bibarel has so much value, like Will said, like, just being able to thin your deck more efficiently, you know, like having guaranteed, if you get Iono to 1, like, you're gonna be able to play the game next turn.
Right.
So anything Bibarel, I think, is automatically on the table for a lot of us.
Yep.
Especially like we were saying earlier, like the fact that Arctina's a deck again. I can
Yes,
play
so
Beaverells and stuff. Like even though Path's leaving, I don't know the deck needs it. You can hit 330 now.
Yeah, I don't think it matters.
You can
Yeah.
take that. You
No,
can
it's
take
still
that one
good.
big knockout. That's usually like what the deck was. I don't want to say missing, but like it hurt when
It definitely
you
hurt for
couldn't
it.
take. Yeah, if you can't one shot a Charizard, like your Charizard matchup gets so much better. Even though like yes, you're losing Path, which I think right now Arceus tramples Charizard. But you're losing Path, right? So like your win con against it right now is leaving, but now you're like, oh, I can one shot a Charizard at some point in the game. And that's huge.
Yeah.
Yep.
And do it twice.
And I think too,
Yeah.
we're in a
If you
format where
recycle
like
it.
you're hitting two Trinity Novas a lot now,
Yeah,
right? So that's also big.
absolutely. Yeah. And it's cool that we're coming back to Arceus because it's sort of like one of the few decks that is left from the building philosophy of the late Sword and Shield era, where it's just like this is just a good deck. It just is. Being able to dig 2 cards that whatever you want out of your deck, like once a game, just happens to be really good.
Yeah.
Like it's cool that these are like coming back. It's cool that Arceus is doing so well, and that matchups are getting better for it. I love playing Bibarel into most decks. I think it's like the default engine when people are like, I don't know what to draw. Like how I'm gonna draw cards. Are we doing Curlia or are we doing Bibarel? Like what is it?
Yeah,
absolutely.
It eliminates a lot of that like early fear too. Like
Mm-hmm.
you know, if you're a deck that happens to play the Bibarel but also a Squawkabilly, and you're like holding a handful of things you might like to have, like Bibarel and one Pal Pad eliminates so much fear from the rest of your game.
Oh
right?
yeah, you're chilling.
Like how silly, you know?
Yeah.
So
now, are you guys
also
pro
can't forget
Squovit
about-
or no?
Oh yeah, I was about to say we can't forget about the literal best card in the game.
Absolutely.
Small Squirrel, best card in the game.
Might as well be for a Seal Stone because you're still just getting one card, whatever you want. It's always the top deck.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
That's Grant Manley, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
So
no, I love
sick.
Squovit. I think, I mean,
Yeah.
if you're playing the Bibarel engine, like, there's almost no reason not to include the Squovit as long as you can afford a
Yeah.
bench spot. But
especially
if
now
you're
that
playing
Lost Box is
Bibarel,
kind of
you
going
probably can afford a bench spot.
down. Absolutely.
So
Yeah, agreed.
I think just being able to reset your hand, or like, even particularly in Arceus, like there's situations if you're playing an Arc deck with Bibarel, or you just have too many energies in your hand and you can't Trinity Nova
Yeah.
into something. Like
Just put them back in the deck.
put it back in the deck. That's a
Be
huge
dumb.
interaction that's come up a lot, especially in Arceus lately for me. So it's like, I think that card is just incredible, and just Iono proofing yourself even to like, oh, if I'm gonna get Iono'd, like I don't want any of these cards. Just throw them on the bottom of your deck.
Yeah.
Well, I think it becomes Iono becomes a strategy for yourself, right?
Yeah.
Like you're willing to hold a junk hand for a turn, knowing Iono's in it. If you can literally go Iono Bib, Squovit Bib, right? Like if you're double bibbing,
crazy.
like the Iono into Squovit is ridiculous. Yeah,
because then you're
ridiculous.
seeing the top, however, let's say 4 off of the Iono. You put those away. You see a 5th card, and then you get rid of those and see another fresh 5. You're seeing 10 cards playing one supporter, where it's a more linear. Like you might as well be playing Colress from Plasma. Like you're literally like, I just saw 10 cards. That's crazy, and it's just because I have a couple of rodents. Yeah, I didn't have to discard or lost zone a thing.
Yeah,
I'm
like
chilling.
you're thinning without thinning, like thinning without losing resources.
Yeah, which is so good.
Yeah,
cool. Well, I think we've definitely exhausted some of the rotation stuff. One thing I didn't actually get to mention in the pre-show is except I did mention this to you, Will. I want to kind of talk about the Pokemon Presents we just had Tuesday, kind of pivoting to that. Definitely one of the lighter ones, but still very exciting, I'd say. What did you guys think?
For me, it's like one of those things, as someone who's primarily a TCG fan, like it's never super exciting.
Yeah.
Right? But we sort of got some cool TCG stuff this time. For me, it's like every 3 years when we know like what the names of some new Pokemon are going to be and what the new games look like, and then maybe when they decide to add some events or tell us when Worlds is. That's always fun, that kind of thing. I do think in an age where most people, regardless of income, location, demographic, have some type of smartphone, but they don't necessarily have access to an LGS or an LCS. I
Yeah.
think something like that new trading card game or the trading card app could be very
Yeah,
cool just
the
for exposure
PTCG
to
Pocket.
the thank you, Pocket. Yeah, I think that could be very cool for kids and adults that just don't have the kind of access that we do to cards and to stores or even financially. It's like, like, hey, we pay our phone bill every month. That's all we need to have some cool cards,
Which
right?
is
I think that's a really cool
incredible.
thing.
Mhm.
Lowering the barrier to
Yeah.
entry is awesome.
It's going to be interesting to see what it kind of looks like because obviously it was the copy was formatted with a lot of like Japanese packs.
Yeah.
And then like the old Charizard EX, like the Flashfire EX,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it'd be interesting to see what it looks like. Is that going to be an option? Like some like legacy and vintage packs and stuff like that? Like
That could be pretty cool.
one pack was like a Red Cheeks Pikachu, and then there was like a Bidoof in it, right? So like, is there going to be some cool stuff like that? Like, listen, I'm going to download it and get my 2 free packs a day, and like,
Oh yeah.
if there's like, hey, if you can buy Hidden Fates packs for a couple bucks, I might throw some cash in there too, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But a couple free packs a day with no paywall other than downloading it. Most people have a phone. I think it's a really cool thing for the card game. Looks like there's some like limited aspect of battling in it, which could translate into some future players too. So
Right.
I think that's a really cool thing for the TCG.
Love lowering the barrier to entry. I love it's part of why I like the crafting system on live. It's part of it's not perfect. Like I love it in the sense that like you can just get the cards you need to build your deck. Like, but lowering that barrier to entry is so cool. I love being able to help this game grow. One of the things I've been doing at my local game store is we've been hosting maybe like a quarterly or like not as frequently as quarterly, but something close to that. We would host tutorials, and the store would contract me out, and for $5, like they did this at a loss, like every time pretty much, except for the first time. They for $5 of entry, it was you'd get the the build and battle, just not the whole kit, but like the pre-con that's in there, like this is the still wrapped stuff that gives you the promo and like the energies and the stuff you need. You'd get that. And you'd get like 3 hours of an afternoon where I would go through and just painstaking like what's going on in this game. Here's what HP means. Here's what attack cost means. Here's the retreat mechanic explained. Like, I love getting new people in, and like, shout out to Buzz City Games in Concord for that one, because it is a crazy thing to work at a loss just to get new people in the door to the game, and it's why I'm so excited about Pocket. There's something to be said
future proofing themselves a little bit, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's cool that we're getting it looked to me also like a spiritual successor to the Dex app, where we had just like the entire card database in our phones. Bummed that went away, and then I discovered pkmncards.com, and I wish that they had an app. So it looks like it'll be really cool if we can get something like that again, and it's just so cool. I do love the art aspect of it as well, where it's like, let's go into the art of the card. It's something that the Pokemon Company has killed lately, is just like the art behind every card is so good.
Yeah, the immersive art thing was a really cool component of that video for sure.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It definitely gave me big Duel Links vibes, which I think is awesome, because I'm sure Konami got a lot of people who played Pokemon, or maybe they played Yu-Gi-Oh as a kid, and then Duel Links came out, and they're like, "Whoa, I remember Yu-Gi-Oh!" and like will play on their phone. And I'm sure there's definitely a percentage of people who started playing Duel Links who then got into the physical trading card, and it. I know a lot of people were like, "Oh, like there's no TCG news. Like this is a bummer." And while it might not be for us, people who are already playing the physical card game, I don't think that was really the target audience for what Pokemon's trying to
No.
do, right?
Right.
They wanna get as many people as possible exposed to Pokemon cards.
Yeah.
And especially like Will was saying, like at a point where you can get 2 free packs a day. Like a lot of people can't afford to go buy 2 packs of Pokemon
No.
cards a day.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean
That's
you're
a
looking
lot
at
of
like
money.
$8 to $10 a day on packs. So just creating an ecosystem where they can expose people on their phones to Pokemon in as wide of a audience as they can, I think is a huge win for Pokemon. And I wouldn't be shocked
Huge.
to just like in Duel Links. Like I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of people who start playing that like, oh, this is cool, but the gameplay is a little simple. Like I wonder what the actual game is like, and then
Yeah.
they'll wander into a store and one thing leads to another, and they're starting to play Pokemon.
Yeah.
And I can't wait. Like I can't wait to be the one that teaches them, the bigger components of the game. Like, hey, this is the skeleton you learned is cool. Let us guide you the rest of the way.
Mhm.
I can't wait. Yeah.
It's gonna be so exciting. And it's crazy because like you can really start to see where the Pokemon Company International's head is at and where their heart is at when they start to put out projects like this. Because we're also already seeing the biggest surge of growth that the game has ever seen. The fact that Charlotte was 2,100 Masters TCG players. Like, that is... And it's not just limited to TCG. Like, VGC and Go and Unite are also seeing a ton of growth. But, like, when you're seeing that amount of growth, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you be like, oh, let me put this app out that lets like the collectors get in on it. Let me get the people an app out that's like gonna get people who are just care about the art or like just like the look of it, but have never really played, or like, oh, I know Pokemon, like I've heard of it. Oh, there's a thing that's just gonna give me cards that I can learn about it. I can play this little game. Sure, let me see what this is about. Like we're gonna be capping tournaments and like growing the game, and we're gonna be seeing more players than ever before, and I'm so thrilled for that. It's why I'm maybe not as upset as some folks were about them diverting resources to that instead of live. Like, do I wish that live was better? Yes, always. But am I way more excited for like the next several thousand people who are going to get into the game because of Pocket? Absolutely.
Yeah, I can't wait for the day where like we have to book regionals in New York and Chicago and Boston because cities like Indianapolis and Peoria literally can't handle the game anymore, right?
Yeah.
Like that's only going to be good. The prize pool is only going to go up.
Yeah.
The youth being injected into the game is only going to keep it more relevant, and it's going to keep us better at the game because when you have, I mean, like, look at Reagan and look at like those kind of people, like
goated player.
Right? Like literally twice his age, and keeping me like I have to stay on my toes because of his skill set. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like I can't wait for that next crop of that. And I think, again, Pocket grants access to some people that maybe would never considered it.
For sure. Yeah, no, loved Pocket. I think for sure as TCG players we kind of got the short end of the stick. I will say though, I am thrilled, and we'll circle back to TCG in a second. I'm so pumped for Legends ZA. It looks
sick.
So good.
I think cool.
I never got to play Gen 6 like that. So I'm really looking forward to getting to play with those Pokemon and like getting to experience that story in a different light and just being able to play it. I think
the Switch is so
Go
far
ahead.
superior too to like the DS, right? Like that would have been DS, right?
Yeah.
3DS.
Yeah, 3DS or
3DS.
Yep. Yeah, 3DS. Like the Switch is just like there's never been a handheld that good, right?
Right.
Like, so yeah, to see that game on a Switch or to play it, have that playability is gonna be so much better for sure.
Absolutely. And it's cool too because like this isn't your dad's Game Boy Advance, or well, I mean,
no,
I don't know, for you guys to be like the Game Boy Color. or something like that. Like
For
this
me, it's the
isn't.
Game Boy.
Yeah, I jumped in on the SP when it like came a little after it came out. So like that was my
sick.
first time.
Dude, the little
Great system.
laptop.
Oh,
So
yeah.
sick, yeah.
So it's cool that we got a mobile console that's making it better. I'm super stoked. I got to play Oros on the 3DS, and that was super cool. Getting exposed to like what some people say is like the best Pokemon games, which I think is a reach. But like they were really high quality remakes, and being able to experience the complexities of like Mega Evolution and like all of the great things that came with Gen 3, and you know, just that whole world that came in that. I'm excited to see because clearly like the design philosophy of Gen 6 games was in the heart of Oros. I got to experience that a little bit, and I'm so pumped to see it on the Switch hardware with the Arceus formula to approaching combat and RPG elements and just like collecting Pokemon. I think it's going to be dope. I'm so glad that we're getting like a Zygarde-centric game. Oh man, it's going to be good.
I'm hoping like the gameplay has the Arceus feel too, like maybe just a prettier version. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it'll be interesting because a lot more. It seems like, I don't know if they've officially announced it or not, but it seems like almost all, if not all, of the gameplay is going to be just in Lumiose, right?
Yeah, I think that was confirmed.
So I mean, that'll be wild too. We're so used to exploring a region, and I mean, also kind of lore wise, wraps into the XY games really well too, because right in Lumiose there were so many areas in the city that were cut off, like you could not go to in X and Y. So it'll be cool to get to explore all of Lumio City for the first time, and not like as impressive as it was on the 3DS at the time. Like that was a crazy reach for the technology at the time, but actually getting to explore the whole city and see what is actually in Lumiose is going to be really exciting.
It's got me looking real hard at an OLED. You know what I mean? Like I've never really like cared to consider an OLED, but like I feel like especially in the nighttime scenes and like Lumiose, I feel like on the low, on top of too, like it could almost have like a Spider-Man type of feel, right? Like you said, like you're just so used to like rolling around Brooklyn and Manhattan, like you know what I mean? Like it could have a similar appeal, like this is my city, you know?
Yeah. I'm also curious to see if we'll get if because it's so much more brought back and it's not coming out this year, it's coming out next year, which is kind of unheard of for them to go like a year without like a minor release even. I think that and this is totally wishful thinking, but also I for sure want the credit if I called this. I think we might see a way better iteration of open world than we saw with like Scarlet and Violet. Because one thing about Scarlet and Violet that I've heard as a major pain point, and that I definitely agree with, is like it's a vast world, but it is super shallow. We don't get to go into like NPCs' homes anymore. We don't get to like walk into random office buildings and like, oh, there's some guy here that we can battle. Like if we're scaling it back to one city, and while it's a big city, if we get to scale it back to one city, but I'm able to explore every building in that city, dude,
super cool.
That's gonna be the Pokemon game that we've been begging for.
Yeah, it'd be very cool. I mean, like you said, in Scarlet and Violet, you'd be like climbing a hill, and all of a sudden you just can't go anywhere for some reason.
Yeah,
it's just like it's like the mountain in Skyrim that just stops.
Yeah.
So, like that's the Scarlet and Violet effect. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I'm super stoked for that, and I'm super stoked for also the return of Mega Evolution, which brings me back also to the TCG. I can't imagine we don't get Mega Evolutions back.
Yeah, they'll
like
be back.
That would be. I'm sure they will. Like there is a almost zero chance that we just skip it. You know, like which I'm excited to see, and I think we'll probably get some cool innovation on that too.
I think it's going to be, Pokemon has had a tendency recently, which I don't hate. You look at Battle Styles had the Strike archetypes, right? And they like bled into Evolving Skies and Fusion Strike a little bit, but like for the most part, Fusion Strike had an archetype that was built from a set. And like now we're going to see Ancient Box and Future Box kind of be an archetype built from a set. Obviously it's trickled in, but like its construction is coming from a set. And I think when you look at the Mega Evolutions, you look at like the next version of Astral Radiance, right?
Yep.
Which like we got Hisui in Legends.
Yeah.
And then you saw like Lost Origin and Astral Radiance dabbled a little bit into
Just a
that
little.
game.
Yep.
And I think you'd be crazy to think that they're not going to do the same thing. So I think it could just be like a one set archetype thing,
Yeah.
but it still gives us 3 years of viability for this weird Mega Evolution thing. I'm game.
Which
You know
I'm
what I
so
mean?
pumped.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially if not only design wise, like if they bring new megas that haven't been
they've
released at
got
this
to.
point, like I think they have to too. So like that'll be
Yeah,
crazy.
absolutely.
But
Imagine like megas of ancients
yeah,
and stuff like that. Like
who
a Mega
knows?
Moon.
Yeah, megas of starters who have never had megas. Like
I just want
Yep.
Mega Empoleon, dude. Give me that.
Oh, that'd be so.
yeah,
Just
there's so many
King
Pokemon
Penguin.
that deserve mega evolutions that
So
haven't
many.
gotten them still. So
I would say all of them actually probably deserve Mega Evolutions.
I'm not mad about it.
Because I mean,
I'd be so on
the
board.
Gigantamax list was huge, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So why shouldn't the Mega
Yeah.
list be huge?
And like
Absolutely, I agree
as
with
a
that.
mechanic, I love Mega Evolution. I think it's one of the better like extra mechanics Pokemon's ever done in terms of like thematics
Definitely.
and actual like implementing into the games and whatnot.
The
The one
Like the
execution was
dual
beautiful.
option of it. Yeah.
the one thing about Mega Evolutions I don't love is Spirit Links. That was a terrible mechanic. I didn't play when Megas were like meta, right? That was just before
Right.
I started playing. But I've played plenty of retro formats that had Mega Pokemon in them, and if I never have to attach a Rayquaza Spirit Link again, I'll be
Yeah.
a very happy camper.
That one and Alakazam are like the ones like too. You'd be opening Fate's Collide and it's just like every pack Alakazam, Spirit Link. Like, bro, I've got enough.
Well, I think also the Pokemon Company International has learned from their previous mistakes. I think, and like my group's been kind of thinking about this. Like, I think we might see it implemented as something more similar to like level X's and break cards.
Okay, yeah.
That would be perfect.
Where like
Great.
you might have like a mega like whatever. Let's say like Mega Charizard Z, because of course he's getting a new mega form because he needs it. Mega Charizard Z, he's gonna come out, and this will be, mind you, a year deep into the era of having these huge, bulky Stage 2 Pokemon.
Mhm.
So we might see a Pokemon that like comes out of the gate and has like, which I kind of hope we don't see this, but also maybe if we can get to that point for like an evolution deck doing super well, we might see a mega, Charizard Z that's like, oh yeah, he's just got like 380 hit points or like 350 just because he's so big, he's so strong, he's hitting hard. But like also you're taking 3 prizes when you knock it out.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
sure.
And it'll be cool to see that kind of just such a great innovation on an already beloved mechanic. I really hope we do get something like that, because I can't imagine they do it the way they did with when it was originally introduced, just because there's kind of a bit of disdain in the community for the way that was executed in the TCG. It wasn't very graceful. It didn't lend itself to like really consistent and like, I don't know, good feeling decks per se. You were kind of like, you live and die by the mega you have in the deck, and there was only a couple of them that were even viable to begin with.
Exactly.
So being able to have that more elegantly introduced, because there's more support for the game, and there's more time to learn from these mistakes. Like, I'm pumped about it. I'm so pumped for megas to be back.
I like the idea of it coexisting too with really strong single prizers.
Oh yeah.
So like, because if you had like, if you got 32 ancient cards in your discard and you're like just running up a mega with a baby Roaring Moon.
Yeah.
Like,
absolutely.
Like, I can't wait to be that guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and what's crazy is like you can still like, and I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves, but like if you really want to, listen, you can just spread your damage out, Devo that son of a gun, and you're good.
Yeah.
You're chilling.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, we got 3 years of Devo in the. Yeah.
I think that might even become like, they've been doing like these once a game mechanics so much lately. They might even change it into being like a once a game you can, or like X amount of times per game you can mega evolve. And if you, which would bring crazy value to devolution, because if you get devolution out of your stage 3 Pokemon, like that's a big problem. But it also means you have to build your deck better, and you have to play more carefully, and you have to express your skill more, which we were talking about earlier.
Outside of your mega,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you have any ideas for like implementation? Anything you want to see out of Legend ZA or like the megas when they come back, or anything from that announcement?
Yeah, I would definitely want to see it implemented, kind of like the way you said your group was talking about it. Something more similar to like the way they did level X's or breaks. I think the game has gotten past the point of attach a tool, your turn ends.
Yeah.
It's slow for what I think the game is at right now.
Mhm.
I think you're saying too. Historically, there were so few Mega Pokemon who were actually viable, and like, I mean, really, off the top of your head, like Mega Ray is like the one, and other than that, like
Mega
people be like,
Audino once.
yeah, like Audino won Worlds though, but okay, that literally wasn't a deck before Worlds.
Yeah.
That was a deck only at Worlds.
Right.
It was a meta call.
It was a
It was purely a
insane.
meta call.
It was an insane
Yeah.
meta call. Like the deck did not exist. Mega Audino was not actually a good Pokemon.
Yeah. No, that was on the same level as like the truth.
Yeah, exactly. Like very fondly remembered deck, right? But really only existed for a
Well, just can't
very
be
short
mad
amount
at
of
Mega
time.
Audino, right? Like
Right.
you, I can be mad at Mega Audino.
Yeah,
Like,
Yeah.
exactly.
Exactly.
But like, I love
It's
the
just
break
his friendship.
mechanic.
Yeah.
I was a big fan of the break mechanic.
I just hate the board state. That's all.
It
I,
looks a little weird when your
yeah.
Pokemon are like T-posing.
I think
Um,
it's sick. I love it.
I mean, I played a lot of
The
Zoroark
all
Break.
gold. Ooh.
Don't get me started about Xerneas Break. Loved that. um, I was a big fan, and I thought too the break mechanic was like really cool, but ultimately a lot of the Pokemon didn't end up being viable. It was there was very few. There was like Xerneas Break, Greninja Break, Zoroark Break,
I think Lugia had a moment, right?
a very
Or
brief
like,
one.
or it had like a weird dedicated group
Mhm.
that made it sort of good, right? Like,
Yeah, so I mean the breaks were
Lugia cult.
pretty limited. But I think the mechanic itself was solid. I just think they didn't print a lot of them to be super good.
it does feel like the game designers have like in general improved though, right?
Mhm.
Like they're not constantly
Absolutely.
picking on certain Pokemon for being bad.
Yeah.
Or they're not always making like for whatever reason they do want to make everything that starts as an apple a really good card, but aside from that,
here
like,
for
it
it.
seems like there's a more
I
fair
love it.
dispersion of things.
Yeah, so I
Dude,
mean, if they
yeah,
do
no.
something like that where it's less,
Give me Mega Hydrapple.
yeah,
I don't hate. I
that'd be
don't
crazy.
hate it.
That would be fire.
I'm ready for Hydrapple
Yeah.
EX whenever it comes out. Like that card
That's
has
gonna be
to.
so
That
sick.
card has to be good.
Reggie Drago is gonna pop off when that comes out. Actually, for real, and that's not
Easy.
a meme.
I'm ready.
Oh yeah.
Maybe that deck has
And
its
like
time to shine after rotation. You know, who knows? As more dragons get introduced to the pool, and
True.
you never know. But yeah, I would
with
like
no
to see
fairy
something like
yet again.
yeah, I would love to see something like the level X's or the breaks. Just getting away from the tool into Mega, it was just
Yeah.
clunky to me. But something like
Especially
that
because
where
now we have Arvin. Like
yeah,
Arvin is just like, okay, Arvin for the Spirit Link and the Ultra Ball, and we're good. We're there.
Yeah.
You know, Luminian for the Arvin.
Exactly. And if we can get away from that, it'd be awesome.
For sure.
Or even like you were saying, like maybe maybe they even print. This could be a little more wild, but maybe they print the Mega Pokemon as like similar they did to Radiance, where like you can only play one of
Ooh.
them in your deck, and it's like a really
That'd be
powerful
lit.
card, but you can only play one of it. So that way like decks aren't
Yeah.
solely relying around playing their Mega, but it's an option for them.
Yeah, I think it kind of brings the dynamic that they wanted V Unions to have, even where it's like, because you're only getting that out once a
100%.
game, but it can be like you're okay. Here it is. Like this is the moment I've been building up to all game. This is my big dude, and he's here to stay. Like if you can't deal with this, this is like my big win con. Like this is my partner Pokemon. Like this is my big anime pro tag moment where I'm bringing out my best pal who I've been practicing with this deck with, and you got to figure out what to do about it. I'm so stoked for that.
One of our teammates will continue to rock Mewtwo Union until the rotation happens.
I respect it.
And he's hitting finals and cups with it.
Yeah.
Right. Like anytime you're comfortable going down by 5 prizes, like is stupid. Right.
Yeah.
So like
being able to come back with that is bananas.
Yeah. So I mean, like if you it's one of those things, if you could make it work, yeah, like bring it. Absolutely. And I like, that's immediately what I thought of when you were talking, is like something like that, where like assembling the mega or something has a complication built into it, but once you do, there's like a power structure that like is really hard to beat.
Yeah. People just like seeing things come together. Like, people love it's something about, it's like, it's the Voltron effect is what I like. When you've got like a bunch of little dudes that come into one big guy, people like that stuff. I like that stuff. You like that stuff. Everyone likes that stuff. And so being able to see like all the pieces assemble, whether it's like in a V-Union style where there's multiple cards that build up the mega, or if it's like something like a break where you put it on there and you got to turn it to the side because it's a little different in orientation, like, or whatever. Or like, because you think about like the Legends mechanic, like they've been working on stuff where you have like multiple cards that make something really strong. And so if we see some kind of innovation like that for megas when they come back, man, we'll be eating good. We just will.
Yeah, I like the idea of being rewarded for the construction of your game.
Yes.
And there is a lot of reward right now in the game for just spamming Arvins. So I agree with Jay wholeheartedly. Like, we need something to break up some of that.
Yeah, totally agree with that. Dude, geez, it's already been an hour 45. Holy cow. Luckily we did kind of talk about a good majority of things. And in a second, I definitely want to talk about, obviously we can briefly touch on Orlando. We've talked about rotation enough that like we don't have to harp too much on Orlando. But before we move on to like the next couple tournaments coming up, I want to talk real briefly. Will, you and I have been talking about spread decks and their place in the meta and how they might be coming back, especially if some of those ideas that like might come to fruition in the next couple formats. Now, you said you'd been taking a break because you've been rocking the moon lately. Do you have
big time?
Yeah. Do you have any ideas or like hopes for like a spread deck coming up in the future with Rapid Strike Box leaving?
I mean, like, full disclosure, I'm just like been waiting around for someone to make Meowscarada better.
Meowscarada's good.
I haven't been putting in the work.
Right.
I've been like kind of hoping somebody else wanted to put in the work. One of our guys put in a lot of work, as you and I had discussed a little bit. And like right around the time it got exciting is right around the time when other decks were just too good to not be playing. We did figure some things out. It feels like we figured out that Meowscarada doesn't need DTEs. And like when we told other people that, they're like, what are you talking about? It's like, well, just sit down and relax, right? But it feels like there's no true, like, I know there's like a little bit of future that can play some spread, right? We were talking a little about that. Like Jugulus has some play somewhere. I think, is it Jugulus that we were talking about?
Yeah, I've been working on an Iron Jugulus list that I'm very fond of at the moment. I just need to cook it up a little more.
But nothing feels like game constructing spread, right? Urshifu had from turn 2, like, I'm developing the rest of my game.
Yeah.
Whereas the current spread archetype feels like I'm putting damage out there for my attacks to be reactive.
Yep.
Instead of developing making my opponent's board state hard to develop. And it just feels like in a world where Devo exists, we need more of a Rapid Strike archetype for spread to be super effective.
Yeah.
It's always cool to like spam damage across a board, the way Sableye does it, but you were developing a game plan as soon as your first Italian VMAX hit the board, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You were putting damage places just to fix your math, to figure out, okay, how am I going to maximize my rapid flows and stuff like that.
Exactly. And it's really interesting too, like people thought Jirachi was going to fix the problem, and as Rapid Strike players, we just said, no,
we just started playing boss.
Take an extra turn. Well, yeah, and we're just willing to take an extra turn, right? Or like we're doing dumb stuff like starting Metacham, you're playing Mew, fine, I'm going to Yoga Loop you on my first turn.
Yeah.
I'm just going to put 20 damage out there.
Whatever.
Like, I'm going to put 2 damage counters out there, and next turn, the next time Yoga Loop's available, I'm going to punish you for it again.
Yep.
Or I'm just going to keep constructing damage because you have odd numbers on your babies underneath all these candied Pokemon.
Yeah.
50 on Pidgey.
Yeah, you're playing the 50
on
HP Pidgey. I'm eating good.
Well, and the 70 on Jirachi to match that were two real fun numbers because you go 6 and 6, you move one,
it's easy,
and now
easy math.
You're doing some real easy math. And I think we're missing a constructed game plan within Spread right now.
Certainly.
I guess is what I would say.
Yeah.
So that's,
I'd agree with that for sure. Even in my testing with the Future Box, or not Future Box, but the Future Spread deck that I've been working on, it doesn't have that like methodical, like think ahead, run the numbers, and move your damage to have like really big impactful plays. But it is cool that it is able to kind of like get set up and be extremely punishing for decks if they play a handful of little guys, because you can get numbers, you can get a lot of math fixed very quickly. I think that with the proper support, Iron Jugulus is going to be an outstanding card. Because at least
I think you could get, pardon me, I think you get people to make some interesting mistakes with it as well. Like if you were to like, do some math stuff with Jugulus and then play an Avery right now, right? Like, obviously I think we lose Avery, correct?
Yes.
But like right now, right? Like, you spam some damage out there and play an Avery and you put damage on some stuff that people don't want to get rid of. Like there's a real trepidation right now, right? Like there's still a way of like, it's almost like Spread control.
Certainly.
And like you said, you're doing some math correcting and stuff like that. I think that's really great. But I still think it needs the ability to have like the non-attack prize taking.
Yeah.
In order for Spread to stay good. Which
requires
the main components of the Spread to be fairly bulky, which is why I think you'd play into Charizard and you'd be like taking prizes off their bench and off Devo, and like they'd hit you once and realize they still weren't knocking you out and be very frustrated.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
yeah, absolutely.
I'm hopeful Spread can make a comeback with rotation. Maybe there's some cards that haven't been announced yet, or like we just haven't seen yet, that maybe not in Temporal Forces, but sets immediately following that.
Yeah.
Like Will was saying, I feel like it's just missing a little something, and I think the last time Spread was like really truly viable was probably like late Sun Moon block, where you had stuff like Flying Flip Tapu Koko, attach 1 energy, do 20 to everything. So like now guys are a little bigger, so I don't know if 20 really is like enough now.
You'd have to do 40 to get anything kind of
exactly
rolling.
But at that time when like there were viable Spread decks, you had Coco doing 20 to everything, you had Shrine of Punishment to put a damage counter on 2 prize Pokemon every turn, you had Magical Swap Tapu Lele. So if you're spreading a bunch of damage, then you could make a play where you move it all to one thing to take a big knockout.
Was that the same format as Blacephalon as well, where it had Lost Mine when your opponent's at 3 prizes?
I don't remember if they overlapped at all, but
I don't know. I didn't play at that time.
Like there were cool things that Spread could do at that time, or like even you had like Malamar Spread, right? Or like
that's what comes to mind for me.
Yeah, Malamar Spread was awesome because like it had a really strong Spread component to the game, but it wasn't the only strategy the deck could rely on to win games. You still had Shining Lugia to take knockouts. You still had Giratina with Distortion Door, or whatever the ability was called, to come back and like swing to supplement the spreading that you could do. So like there were decks in the format where absolutely you could spread and just pick their board apart. But there are also decks in the format, they're just big basics, where you'd have to rely on like the Shining Lugia and the Distortion Door and stuff like that. So I don't know, maybe like a Spiritual Shrine of Punishment could come back, now that Path is leaving. Path is like our big basic hate for the most part.
Sure.
Maybe something like Shrine comes back, where it says in between turns put a damage counter on all Pokemon V and Pokemon EX. Maybe something like that coming back could be a huge benefit to Spread decks.
For sure. Yeah, because right now, like, Gapejaw Bog and Old Cemetery aren't cutting it.
Yeah.
No. And even, like, old cemetery is almost like a meme at this point, right? When you see it come out, it's because you think someone hasn't constructed their deck well.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
It's just the Mew
and it's not.
Con.
Yeah, and it was like, again, it was really, when it came out, I put it in Cursula,
Right.
and I played it with like the Arctozolt, and like you would catch KOs and like Shadow Rider decks because they have to attach everything from hand, right?
Mhm.
Right.
Super fun, super cool. But aside from that, like if I see a cemetery come down now, I'm like, what is this? Like,
Yeah.
what cards were you missing that you had to put a cemetery in instead?
Right.
Right.
Yeah, you might as well be playing like Radiant Chargebug at that point. It's like, this is bad. You should feel bad.
I don't hate the idea though. Like, you know, if we did have something that buffed even 3 damage counters instead of 2, with Zam, you're at 5. With Gapejaw, you're at 7. Now we're taking like some really interesting. Like someone puts, you know, their Rachi down, thinking like they're good to go, no big deal.
Yeah.
Right, and then you spam 3 and then just move 2. Like all of a sudden, we're in some like really interesting territory. So like, it's funny, like you made a mention, like you could put 2 damage counters on everything, and that feels really low. But even adding just 10, like adding 1 damage counter to that feels
pretty good
in a world with Squavets and Bidoofs and Frigibacks
Pidgeys.
that like
50 HP Pidgeys.
You know, and Pidgeys, right,
Mhm.
and Manders, right? Why not? And because again, you know, in the back of your head there is Devo.
There is.
I can
Devo.
do 2 turns of this if I have to. Yeah.
No, it's super cool. It's why I've been cooking it up so much. I love the spread play style. I've been really enjoying what this list gets me.
Yeah, we bonded over it, man.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, that's like, yeah.
I love it. It's super exciting that hopefully we'll get something like that. But I don't know. I wanna wait until rotation comes out to really try this list because it has been consistent. I've been able to and Jay, I want to fill you in on the deck, kind of the way it is right now. I've been running the Miraidon that accelerates into futures, combining that with the Iron Jugulus that has homing headbutt, does 50 damage to 3 guys that already has damage on them, and then a heavy switch count, like heavy switch cards, Pokestops, and Iron Valiants to get a couple of damage pings, and then put 50 on 3 guys, and we're doing that as early as turn 2, which feels really good. EXP shares to keep energy on the board.
Yeah.
And it's almost there.
Yeah, I remember looking at that Iron Jugulus card, and I was like, oh, that's a pretty neat attack, but I remember the only thing really holding it back was the heavy energy requirement. Is it 3 colorless or is it 5?
It's 3. The second attack is 150 for 5, but if you have the future booster attached, it's just 3.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I mean,
which is pretty good.
It's a solid attack, and you know, looking at it on face value, you'd be like, oh, 3 energy, that's a ton. Like, how am I getting 3 energy on it? But like you said, with the Miraidon, you're accelerating 2 onto it, then next turn it's just manually attach, and you're good to get rolling.
Yeah,
we have a lot of really non-traditional energy acceleration right now too.
Absolutely.
Right. So like you know, like I would say Arceus and Mirage Gate are quote unquote traditional versions of, right? Like you've paid a cost of some kind, because like whether that's DTE attachment, or I had to play V-Star, or I did this, or I had to evolve to make it happen, yada yada yada. Whereas you're talking about like I simply put them right on in play, chose a kind of small attack, and just ramped energy up.
Yeah, my
it's very non-traditional.
My cost for this is I only hit 40, which in a spread strategy is better anyways to only do 40. I only play 1 crown in the deck. I play 1 crown because its attack shreds through mana fee. And you almost never want to take that knockout turn 1 going second.
No, you want those 40 on the board. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah. I don't know. I'm stoked.
It's got to be close, right?
It is close. And I've definitely like had moments where I've been like, I might be cooking a little too much because I put like Mela in the deck. But like,
that's when you give me a call and you're like, I think you need to slow me down, right? Like,
yeah. For sure.
I think it's definitely like it's one of those decks or strategies that I feel like is like a card or 2 away from being
always
actually viable.
Yep.
Meowscarada comes to mind. You know, there's a lot of stuff that comes to mind right now for decks like that. Where like they're close, they're almost viable. It's like
Yeah.
you give it one or two pieces of actually good support, and it's right in the mix.
Yeah.
Especially with the strength of TM Devolution, if Spread gets one or two tools, like give him a
We're off to the races.
give him a functional shrine reprint. I don't think a functional shrine reprint would break the game by any means.
Certainly not.
But it would make Spread more viable.
Yeah.
And I do think it would reward those of us who have put the time in on Spread, right?
Yeah.
Like, I would say, and this isn't boastful or anything, but like, you are rewarded. You know, Urshifu was a deck that rewarded you for playing it for a long time.
Yes, absolutely.
That's not to say I'm any better of a player because I played Urshifu. That's to say I put in the hours, so I was able to capitalize this.
No, you were just a better Urshifu player because you were an Urshifu player. Like,
but because I played so much Urshifu, I feel like I'm a better Spread player.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty similar with any I don't want to say like non-traditional wins conditions. You know, the most traditional win condition is put energy on Pokemon, knock out the Pokemon in front of you.
For sure.
When you start getting stuff with Urshifu, like every damage counter you place theoretically can matter and should matter. You know, otherwise you just you're suboptimally placing damage counters that are going to get wasted. And often with decks like that, they're not at a power level where you can afford to waste turns.
Yeah,
you know, so just rewarding. I think rewarding any alternate win conditions in Pokemon is a good thing for the game overall.
100%.
For sure.
So, I mean, I would be stoked to see Spread come back.
Yep. I think we'd be all over it as a collective. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I'll be sure to like keep you up to date on what I find with it. But before we hit like too much later, we're already at the 2-hour mark. I want to make sure that we lock down a little bit of commentary about the upcoming tournaments. Because I don't want to keep you guys too long. All right. Cool. So up next tournament, I want to say it's either Vancouver or Utrecht. I think it's Utrecht in Amsterdam. It's this upcoming weekend, and trends right now feel like the meta is going to be largely the same. Do you guys foresee anything coming up that like maybe as a result of people looking forward to Japan's format or something like that might make shake things up in Utrecht?
I think what's interesting is Mew felt like a deck that all Europeans like to play, right?
Yeah, they love it.
And I don't blame them, right? Who can blame them for wanting to play consistently good decks that give you the resources you need to knock out Pokemon, right? That's the game we play. And if you do that more than your opponent, you win $10,000.
Which is great. Right? Yeah, it's a great way to win 10 grand.
So that's dope, right? Roaring Moon also feels like the type of deck that European metas like to gravitate to.
Yeah.
And do we finally see a European regional where Mew is not going to show up very much? And that will be interesting to see. Because I can see, especially, you talk about how well like the Swedes have been doing this year, like as a collective, right? Or I guess all that whole clump, right? The Finnish, the Norway, like they've all been playing so well this year, and that turn and burn, attach energy, knock you out, hit you hard thing feels like a better version of Miraidon.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they are already better at playing Miraidon than everybody else. Why wouldn't they be better at playing Roaring Moon than everyone else? If they're doing that, Mew's not doing anything.
True.
Doesn't matter how much Path you play, doesn't matter how much Judge you play. If I set up 2 Moon in a game and you're playing Mew, you lose.
Yes.
Plain and simple.
Absolutely.
So I think we might finally see Mew trail off at a European tournament for the first time.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think I forgot entirely before one of the guys in our group picked up Moon just how good Seta's Vitality is. That's a busted card.
Most good Mew decks aren't, or only need it once.
Yeah, you're accelerating 2, and then you draw 3. Like
and then you hit stop.
Yeah,
and that's after you get Greninja'd.
Yeah, after you Greninja'd, after all these things, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm also just gonna grab 3 more cards. Also, because I can. Here's a counter catcher. Like, give me your big guy. You're done. Get out of here.
Yeah, the response, like, the response of like Greninja taking 2 cards, and because you're Greninja, you can now play Sada for 3 more cards.
Yup.
Plus, you can ramp up your win condition Moon on the bench while doing it. And chances are, amongst those 5 to 7 cards, you've hit at least one patch.
Yeah.
And you've maybe hit an energy switch. And now your opponent's game is over.
Yeah. It almost feels like
one
Palkia
Sada.
V-Star.
Like, yeah.
Which is
so
crazy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just the sheer pressure that you can put on your opponent, because like if I see you've got 2 Moon on the bench and they both got energy attached, I'm peeing my pants. Like as a Mew player, like I'm done for.
Oh, I mean, at that point,
I just lose.
You scoop, you go to game 2, go first, and hope you have Path in hand.
Yes.
Right. So, yeah, I think we're going to see Mew fall off the European board for the first time and for the last time.
Maybe so. Yeah.
Yep.
What about you, Jay? What do you think?
Yeah, I would think if I would kind of expect the trend that we've seen in the last couple events that everyone knows Gardevoir is a good deck, but there was a stretch of tournaments for a while where it wasn't really putting the results up that we kind of expected it to. I think the last 2 to 3 tournaments we've finally been seeing these Guardies cracking into top 8,
Yes.
and I think that trend is going to continue. I wouldn't be shocked to see at least 2 Guardian top 8 at Utrecht. If there were any trends of people who are like, maybe they're definitely looking towards post rotation at this point. If I had to make like a bold claim, I would say maybe we see an uptake of Charizard with Bibarel engine, and maybe we also see an uptake of Chien-Pao. Compared to the last, I mean, it also doesn't hurt that it just won in Europe.
Right.
But I wouldn't be surprised to see more people hopping on that train to get tournament reps in with those decks, knowing how good they are going to be next format. I don't know if I necessarily agree with the philosophy that you should put time in current format on decks for next format, just because of the intricacies of the new format. It's definitely going to be functionally different, but if people were like, oh, Chien-Pao is really good next format, then they might start tinkering with it, and then they might be like, oh, wait, Chien-Pao is also really good this format.
Yeah, get your reps. Yeah.
I wouldn't be shocked to see a little bit of an uptick of Chien-Pao or like Charizard with the Bibarel engine.
I agree.
I think Bibzard is just the optimal Charizard.
I don't hate that. I mean,
I think the trade feels better, right?
Way better.
Like you don't have as many liabilities just hanging out there.
Yeah,
I mean, like Rotom is a liability, Luminion's a liability.
Yeah. There's not a Pidgeot EX for your opponent to just Iron Hands for 3. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, you're losing
another thing.
You're losing the inherent strength of being able to search for any card you want each turn. Like, Pidgeot's definitely insane. Like, that version's definitely proven, tried and true list. But I do think once that list got discovered, once it was the event in Brazil, I think, where they really got on that like Arven Pidgeot EX.
Yeah, Arven's Zard.
That's where like Arven's Zard was really birthed. I definitely think there was a halt in Charizard creativity at that point. Because before that, like going into that tournament, a lot of people were trying out Bibarel Charizard with like the TM Evos, and once people were like, "Oh, Pidgey's just better," I feel like that's just where everybody ran to, and I definitely think there was a lot of exploring with Bibarel Charizard that could have been done that maybe people are going to start looking towards. They're like, "Oh, it's doing well in Japan. Well, maybe we shouldn't have put it away so fast," So I wouldn't be surprised to see some of that either.
And I think you're going to have the person that says, oh, Guardy's been doing well. A lot of people I know like it. They're taking it to this tournament. I'm going to play Double Hands Miraidon, high roll my way to some huge prize taking.
Yeah.
Because you and I had the conversation at the Cup this weekend. If you knew it was best of 3, I would have high rolled hands all day.
Absolutely.
Right?
I took Guardy to a Cup this weekend. I didn't know it was best of 3 until 10 minutes into round 1.
Oh no!
I absolutely would not have brought Guardy if I knew that. But like looking at the room, it was like
the second worst time to find out there's best of 3.
Yeah,
it was awful. But like looking around the room, there was like 6 Guardies, and
nightmare.
One person brought Charizard, and I was like, Miraidon would have steamrolled this tournament. Guardy doing well, uptick in Guardy. I feel like less people are on Charizard right now, so I wouldn't be shocked even to see a bit of a Miraidon resurgence.
Yeah, that's
the double
true.
Mew with the EXP share too, so you can just do whatever you want.
So good.
Like, yeah. Grant Shen sauced me up with that thing, man. So
yeah. Well, and being able to also, like, on the off chance you do encounter a Zard, just be like, that's crazy. I'm just going to use Mew, and I'll use your own Burning Darkness to just get out of here. You're done, buddy.
Yeah, if you can hands 2-hit knockout, and then Raichu at some point, or like even you can like you said, get a Burning Darkness and with Mew, and at that point if you can like Gust KO
Or
the
Lost
Rotom
Impact.
or the Luminion, that's your 6 prizes right there.
Yeah. Which is really easy to accomplish when you've got electric generators, and I've seen people play like Energy Switch in Miraidon for like that Mew scenario where you just need to take that extra like little bit of energy
catchers,
to keep getting there. Yeah, play the catchers.
Catchers another new thing, right? If you're playing hands, why not play catchers?
Yeah, absolutely. So, no, I think I agree. I think we'll probably see, maybe not.
We should see an uptick in Miraidon. I don't know if we will, but I think we should see.
I think we should. I think if people are like thinking as ahead as they ought to be, as like an optimal player, because like there's a couple of schools of thought. There's like, okay, what's everybody bringing? I'm going to bring what everybody else is countering. I think that's the more popular mindset, where it's like where it's like one tier removed away from what the metagame actually is, and then there's the nth degree after that, where it's like, what is everybody like without overthinking? What is everybody going to be teching into their decks or playing in response to what the metagame is shaping up to be? And that's where you find the people who are like bringing out like a random like, oh, it's been a while since we've seen like a Snorlax win, or like, it's been a while since we've seen Miraidon do really well. Like that's when you see those players really start to shine for their forward thinking and innovative like approach to metagame analysis. And I think that's a really important skill gap that is doing super well right now. Like,
and again, the best Miraidon players in the world are a few miles away from that event.
True.
You know what I mean? They're right there.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's such
I think if I was going to U-Trick and I had to pick a deck, I think I would bring Miraidon at this point.
I would
like
same thing.
Just looking at the past tournaments and how things have been going, like uptick in Moon, Miraidon Moon. I can't say I've tested a ton, but it's probably whoever goes second. I imagine it's probably a pretty close matchup. I think Guardy's going to be represented. I think Mew might fall down a bit, which is great for Miraidon.
Yep.
You know, I think that wouldn't be a terrible bring by any means.
Nope. No, I think it's exactly what I'd be on too.
Cool. Vancouver is a little after that, but honestly, I can't foresee Vancouver being much different because we already don't play a ton of Mew.
The irony of what's different there is it's a smaller tournament than we're used to seeing.
Yes.
Just based on capacity. It's a lot of good West Coast players who do love their Gardevoir.
Yeah.
And after being horrible for a couple of tournaments, I think you could see a real sneaky Rapid Strike approach be effective.
I would love nothing more.
Am I saying I don't think Rapid Strike wins because you are going to hit Moon, right? Yeah. You're going to hit Moon. You're going to hit the double EXP share. Miraidon is really hard to beat. I don't care what anybody says.
No, it's tough.
It's really tough. So, but if you can line up a couple Charizards,
if you can dodge those matchups,
if you can dodge a couple Moon and get yourself to 5-6 wins, you could see a top 32, top 16 of a one last push for the Urshifu.
I'd love it.
That said, I think Guardy wins the event.
Probably so.
I think
probably so.
Yeah. I think that's a pretty good call.
That's definitely where it's at. Or have you guys seen the Thornton Gardevoir?
No.
I saw that earlier today. That was wild. It was like Thornton, Iron Hands.
Yup.
Can't hate that.
It was wild.
I would love so much to see a world where somehow somebody's able to pull off, just some maniac is maybe able to pull off like I'm just going to Thornton into Metacham V and Yoga Loop your Roaring Moon. I think I would cry tears of joy for real.
I've never really understood why Yuga Loop wasn't more prominent in like Lost Box decks, right? Like I'm just
So
gonna put a
good.
bunch of Sable Eye damage out and just Mirage Gate once and see what happens,
Yep.
right? I don't know.
No, I'm
But
right there with you.
most people who play Lost Box are smarter than me, so I don't find any reason to question it at this point.
Yeah. No, I think I agree with you guys entirely. Especially like in Vancouver, there's also like almost no threat of Lost Box, which is what would probably kill a lot of the Moon and Guardy. Is like Lost Box is. There's one variant of Lost Box. Sorry, there's two variants of Lost Zone that are any good. One of them's Tina, which is, I think, a bad deck.
I think for the event, maybe not great.
I don't know. I think in general, I think it got lucky. Every time I play that deck, like it's got consistency to do well, but
things don't tend to get lucky like 3 or 4 times in a row.
I don't know, man.
You know what I mean?
No, you're super right. I'm definitely just a big hater.
You're salty.
No, for sure, because my opponent always has it, and I'm always chorusing for 5 energy.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, it's always Roxanne that gets me. Like I have game on board if I can just keep 2 cards in my hand, and they just get rid of them. Yeah.
Yep. No, so but there's Lost Tina, and then there's the Tord pile that's got Iron Hands and Roaring Moon in it.
Mm-hmm.
And
the glasses could be good for the event.
You might have just made my buddy Matt very happy by saying that.
It's the best. We were talking the other day. It's like one of the best of 1 cup decks you can ever build.
It's a good deck.
I don't think it has much business at most regionals.
No, but it'd be awesome to see it. I'd love to
cool.
see it.
Yeah,
that'll have a place in Europe
for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So
if you hit the matchup roulette right, you pair nothing but meta stuff. I mean, I think you're
good.
You're not in a bad spot.
Tropius. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're cooking. Awesome. I think that's all I've got. We've stuck around for quite a while. Is there anything else you guys want to discuss before we kind of hit the road?
No, like because like Orlando prep is not necessarily secret, but it's still like a work in progress. I think for us, it's a matter of getting our heads on right for that, and there's not much to say aside from us just kind of putting our efforts in the right place and hoping that we come away with 4 day 2s.
Yeah,
I mean, nice. Go a little 4 for 4.
Yeah, we have a teammate that was top 32 there last year, and it would be nice to follow him in.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. Rename all you guys to Wendy the way you're gonna hit that 4 for 4.
I love it.
Yeah. No, sweet. Well, in the meantime, where can the folks at home find you guys?
I'm really bad at the whole Twitter X thing. I think I'm at like Will_UG TCG or something like that. Okay. Just look for an overweight guy in a sort of cool looking jersey. You found me. And then the Facebook, we actually have like an Unplugged Gaming team like group page, and then on Instagram we have an Unplugged Gaming team page as well. We're trying to like be a little bit better about just sharing what's going on and our happenings and stuff there. My personal stuff's not super exciting by any means. So I would say that's like probably the best place. And then if you need any gaming goods, go to unpluggedgamestore.com for sure.
There you go. Jason, what about you? Where can folks at home find you?
I'm going to echo what Will said. Definitely the team Facebook, the team Instagram for following how we're doing at any events. If you're ever in the Syracuse area or central upstate New York, definitely come through Unplugged Gaming. It's a hell of a store.
And we want to chat.
I want to chat, chill. The more people we get in the store, the better. But, if the more people are playing Pokemon, the better. But Twitter at JAS_hits, HITZ. Not the most active on there, but I'm there. That's where I get all my news. That's how I stay up with the Pokemon community. So you can hit me there for that. But Unplugged Gaming team pages for sure, and just follow along with what we're gonna do. Looking forward to big things.
Yeah. I'm excited to see you guys take those big strides. I'll leave the links to these fellas and Unplugged Gaming in the description below on YouTube.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
If I ever do get things uploaded to Spotify, I'll put it in the show notes. But thank you guys so much for coming out tonight. I am so thrilled to have you, and it's been such a great conversation. I look forward to hopefully like maybe we follow up in the future. Maybe like post
100%.
Orlando or like post rotation, we talk some more about the development of our strategies and like just how the team's doing.
Yeah, we can see how right we were
Absolutely.
with post-rotation thoughts.
Definitely,
hope so.
definitely. Awesome. Well, that is it, folks. Like I said, I'm going to leave their links in the description below. Please absolutely go give them a follow. Shout out to Unplugged Gaming. And we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.
Sounds good. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, brother.